All right. Yo, 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 yo. I got some editing to do today. I'm not going to be playing a video game right now. But I will be reacting to the Mehdi Hasan Jubilee debate, which I'm excited to see. I like Mehdi Hasan. I don't agree with him on everything, but I do generally like him. I think he's a good debater. I think he's a good example of how to debate, how to control the flow of debate, how to appear rhetorically effective, optically effective. It seems like he's a well-researched guy too. You can't really beat that in debate. You know, if you have data, facts, little factoids on your side, it certainly helps out a lot. Um, so I'm going to be listening to it, reacting to it, and then I'm going to be editing behind the scenes. You guys can't see that part, which is fine.
For any reason, in any style, at any scale, just by thinking about it.
My family lineage is settlers from the 1500s.
Colonialists.
Okay, I want to real quickly just see if the volume of the YouTube video on the stream sounds loud enough. It's kind of loud for me, but it might not be on the stream. So let's see. Also, cool thing. Some of you guys probably seen already that I got. I figured out a way to play Zoid's Battle Legends, which is like an old school GameCube game. So I'm excited to stream that. Okay, so it's very low on the stream. So here's what I'll do. Turn this up. Turn it up on my headset. Okay, I want to real quickly just see if the
Yeah,
You
colonials.
don't look
yeah.
very Native American to me.
I am Native American. Whites are Native Americans. What are you
Sorry,
talking about?
You're not.
What do you?
and they clap for that. Okay. Anyways.
American to me.
I am Native American. Whites are Native Americans.
Yo, 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 yo.
You're not.
Make sure my voice translates over for that. Okay. Anyways. Yo, 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 yo. Make sure my voice. Okay, good. All right. I think the microphone levels are good then. All right. Yeah. Let's see. I'm excited to also do Zoid's Battle Legends, and then again, I keep bringing up Kingdom Hearts, but I will get around to that. So right now I'm editing the Andor episode 3 reaction. I know I'm late. I've been late. Okay. Well, we'll get there. Okay. We'll get there. I'll be reacting to Andor episode 4 as well today. So the editing for that should happen this week. I should have that one out on time, and we'll be back on track. But anyways, let's get this debate started.
You're a little bit more than a far-right Republican.
Hey, what can I say?
I think you could say I'm a fascist.
Yeah, I am.
Listen to me. I am an immigrant. I'm speaking from personal experience.
Get the hell out.
I don't.
I like how the right has said a lot of things over the years about how they're not this or not that. It's unfair to call them that. But once they've gotten enough power, they don't feel the need to hide anymore. And so now that they think they have control over everything, and they think that, I think they have a misunderstanding too that a lot of times they surround themselves with people who agree with them. The left does this too at sometimes, and you overestimate how much support you have, how normalized your beliefs are. And so I think a lot of MAGA people, they surround themselves with other MAGA people. They talk to other MAGA people online. Their media inputs are like MAGA voices. And I think they don't realize how much they're alienating the average person. So when they say stuff like, oh, I am a fascist actually, get the hell out of my country because you're Muslim, they think that they have got enough support in society to do that because they won the last elections. I don't think they realize that just because they won those last elections doesn't mean that they actually have popular support to go as far as they're going now. But I think in the long run, okay, it sounds kind of crazy. I think it's a good thing because I think normies, centrists, they need to be exposed to like, no, the right is actually as extreme as people have been saying they are for a long time, and they hide how extreme they're being. But when they've been given enough power and they think that they're safe, they will go as extreme as possible, right?
I should get the hell out.
Yes.
Why?
I don't want you here.
I'm Mehdi Hasan. I'm a journalist. I'm the editor of Zeteo. And today I'm surrounded by 20 far-right conservatives. My first claim is Donald Trump is pro-crime and pro-criminal. Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Mehdi.
I would just like to ask, what makes someone pro-crime versus, anti-crime?
I think when you're soft on criminals, when you let criminals out of prison, when you pardon people who've assaulted police officers, you're pro-criminal. Donald Trump pardoned almost 1,600 people who were involved in January the 6th. I think 600 of them had been charged with assaulting a police officer or obstructing a police officer. 170 had pled guilty to assaulting a police officer. 70 had pled guilty to assault with a deadly weapon. J.D. Vance said, we're not going to pardon the violent criminals from January 6th. Donald Trump pardoned all of them. Are you okay with that?
I would say January 6th is a very special case. I would say it's almost a climax point in history. I would just phrase the question this way. Right now in the LA protests, if they were to...
Wix. One platform, any website.
Jeez.
Unlimited creation.
Okay,
Just for example.
quick point to pause her here. So Mehdi he drops this, right? I'm pro law and order, right? And Donald Trump is pro crime. And he does this intentionally to be provocative, right? He knows that Republicans hold the canard for decades now of being like the pro law and order, anti-crime party, and that's what their rhetoric is, and that they have a lot of arguments that are that, oh, actually, liberals are easier on crime and everything like that. So he knows that he can bait them with that statement. He could throw it out there and let them think. And it's funny because they're silly enough to actually think that he doesn't throw that out there being prepared to argue that point, right? But they think like, oh, I can't believe he chose this point to debate on. Like, this is going to be easy W for me. Obviously, liberals are like the pro-crime party and the Republicans are the pro-law and order party. But Mehdi Hasan, he knows he's going to garner that reaction from them, right? He wants to bait them into that. But in order, the whole reason that he's throwing it out there is because he did come prepared to debate that point. And I can already anticipate a lot of the arguments that he's going to make. He's going to talk about, Donald Trump pardoning January 6ers. He's going to talk about Donald Trump's own criminality. And then when they try to hit him back on, well, Democrats support this, and that, he's going to ask him for receipts. Because the reality is that the right, Republican media, will tell people all the time Democrats are pro-crime, they're easy on crime and everything. But they just say that and they throw that out there. And when they point to examples, they're pointing to examples of like individual actors or far left people or political violence, whatever. But the really important key point that doesn't get brought up enough is that the Democratic Party itself does not support these people. You won't really find a connection between the Democratic Party, the leadership, the media voices, and the extremists on the left side. You do find that between the right and the extremists on the right side because you see Donald Trump pardoning those criminals. You see Donald Trump engaging in criminality himself, right? So there isn't that clean, delineation between the party and the extremists, and that's what he's baiting them into.
If they were to rush the capital of LA, I mean, they'd have to move over all the homeless people living in tents on the steps of the Capitol. But if they were managed to get into the Capitol and they were just protesting, peacefully, let's say police officers were rushing them in. They were letting them in and saying, hey, you guys can go in, like we have many testimonies that say.
What about the violent ones, though?
Okay, violent ones like
Like a man named David Dempsey, a judge, a Reagan-appointed judge, sentenced him to 20 years in prison. He stomped on police officers' heads. The judge said his conduct was exceptionally egregious. He attacked police officers with flagpoles and pepper spray. Donald Trump pardoned him. There's a man named Daniel Rodriguez. He got 12 years in prison for taking a stun gun and tasing a police officer in the neck and giving him a heart attack. The judge said he was a one-man army of hate. Donald Trump pardoned him. Does that not make Trump pro-criminal? He's letting violent criminals out of prison.
I would say no, it doesn't make him pro-criminal.
You're okay with that?
I did not say that. I said that one pardon against somebody.
It was 1,600 pardons. 600 of those were people charged with...
one example that you just gave me.
I can give you more. Should I keep going?
Fine. And I'll say the exact same thing every single time.
Then your argument will fall apart because it's not just one example if I keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, Shane Jenkins got 7 years in prison.
This kid wasn't ready.
9 criminal offenses, attacking police with a deadly weapon, destroying government property. Trump pardoned
pardons
him.
that probably shouldn't have
Oh, here we go. Deep rumble in this. Okay.
So you've agreed that they shouldn't have been pardoned?
Sure, but that wasn't your claim, was January 6th. Your claim was Trump is pro-crime.
Yeah, because he pardons criminals.
Okay, I would say that that's a fault.
Let's talk about non-January 6 people.
Okay.
He's pardoned people like Paul Walshak.
There's also an important thing that I keep trying to make the point of for a long time is that a lot of times liberals and progressives, they'll let Republicans kind of dictate the framing of the conversation. What I mean by that is What are we talking about? Very fundamentally, what are we talking about? What kind of talking points are we discussing? What kind of things are we responding to, right? So what I mean by that is we will talk endlessly about illegal immigrants, whether illegal immigrants are committing crime, whether illegal immigrants are taking our jobs, and blah, blah. Why are we discussing those things? Because these are topics that Republicans have brought up. What Mehdi Hasan is doing is he's not letting the other party run away with the conversation. He's directing the conversation where he wants to go, talking about things that they don't want to talk about, talking about things like Donald Trump's criminality, right? And focusing it on that and not letting the other person kind of dictate like, oh, let me deflect away from Donald Trump and let's talk about the Democrats. Mehdi Hasan is going to force these people to confront things that they usually aren't used to confronting.
Recently, who took millions of dollars from his own employees, was sentenced to tax crimes, had to pay back $4 million. Trump pardoned him. He bought himself a $2 million yacht. Why is he pardoning criminals like that?
Well, I don't know. I don't think you should. I don't think really presidential pardons should be a thing at all. But I
agree.
I don't think that.
All right, pause.
That means something.
You've been voted out by the majority. Please
Oh,
take your seat.
Thanks.
I'm glad he said presidential pardons shouldn't be a thing. This is a thing that I've been saying all the way back to my high school days. Very, very, very long time ago. Right? I'm a dinosaur. But it's not something people talk about much. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? These are the kind of topics where no one's talking about it. These are things that we should be talking about and forcing them to respond to, and realizing that because they don't talk about it in their media circles, if you start talking about it, you sound competent. You sound like you have something like a platform, like points to be made, and they sound like they are uneducated on the topic, that they haven't thought about it, like they're a fish out of water, right? It kind of makes them look silly. But I think this is actually a very legitimate way of drawing a distinction between yourself and the other group, is that yes, they look silly because they're not used to discussing the topics you're discussing. Whose fault is that though, right? The fault of that is them and their media ecosystem, that they only focus on these wedge issues. There's a whole world of other concepts, other ideas that we could be discussing and that we should be discussing. And the fact that they don't know about it, they've never thought about it, they haven't had any media personalities to tell them what to think about it, it is a legitimate indictment on their ideology, which is that they only pay attention to and they're only led around by the things that are placed in front of them. And there's all this other stuff that the media misses out on, that your average person misses out on, that we could and should be talking about, and we just don't because we're always responding to them.
How's it going?
Hey, how's it going? Mehdi.
What is it?
Mehdi.
You're from northern UK, I guess?
I'm from London, North London.
Okay, fair enough. What's your ethnic background, if you don't mind my asking?
My parents are from India.
Okay.
Already off the bat, this guy's starting with weird race and ethnic stuff. What's your name again? Oh, that's a weird foreign name. Where do you come from? What's your ethnicity, right? Maybe I'm wrong about it, but it seems weird to be asking that. I feel like he's trying to establish oh, you're different, you're the other, right?
First of all, I want to say
the premise of Donald Trump being pro-crime.
No. I want to concern myself with why you care about what's happening in the U.S. first and foremost. Secondly, I want to say this.
Should people who live in the U.S. not care about?
Let's not interrupt each other. Because I have this thing, people know I have this thing. I have to stay calm, okay? So.
Okay, so when he's saying that, very clearly what he's doing is he's being violent and aggressive. He's saying, oh, I have this thing, you don't interrupt me because I'm going to beat the fucking shit out of you, but he's not actually saying that. And these are the kind of things, by the way, that the right gets away with a lot. No one calls him out on because people seem to give him this pass oh, you didn't literally say the words, you just heavily implied it, right? So therefore it's okay. No, it's not okay. This guy, he's a thug, he's a bully, and he's a gangster, and he's saying, oh, don't interrupt me, which, by the way, Mehdi's responding. Okay, you should be allowed to respond back to the things the other person's saying. The other person shouldn't be able to just control the entire conversation. They're so used to it. This is what I was talking about earlier. Just control the whole entire conversation, talk over you, and just talk past you, and you're not able to respond to anything. And then you try to get a word in, and he says, don't interrupt me, because I have this thing, I bet I have to stay calm, because if I don't stay calm, it's going to be a big problem. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm threatening you right now. And this is the party, by the way, of, oh, we're free speech. We're the party of anti-crime, anti-violence. What he just said right now is a implicit invitation for violence.
Here's the thing. I am.
Oh, great. You are what? I hate that sound.
Happy.
Okay. Quick second while he's doing that. I did some effects on my video. Just want to check to make sure the audio worked good on my editing software. Okay, I think the so I downloaded a software called DaVinci Resolve. It's like a more advanced editing software than I've been using. I've been using like Clipchamp and a free app on my phone called UCut, which I think are both good programs for what they do. You know, they're not supposed to be premium, you know, editing suites or whatever. But DaVinci Resolve has more features available to it. So for example, it'll handle multiple audio streams. I started recording now in my reaction videos multiple audio streams, one stream of my voice, one stream of the video. So that way I can adjust and make edits to the voice audio, and I can adjust to make edits to the reaction video audio independently, right? Let's say I record a video and I find, hey, you know what, the mix between the video audio and my voice audio, the video's audio is a little bit too high, or it's drowning out my voice. Well, the voice part of the whole reaction is the important part. But how am I going to edit that audio now if I combine them together as one audio clip? If I increase the volume to try to increase my voice volume, I'm also increasing the volume of the video audio. If I try to you know, mess around with like the frequencies to get rid of maybe hissing and humming from my voice, like I'm editing also the video reaction audio as well. But if I have them separated out, I can adjust this one separately, and I can adjust this one separately and adjust their volumes, kind of mix them different you know, together or whatever. So that's what I've been trying to do. So I haven't fully figured out how to use this DaVinci program. There's a lot there, but for now, all I needed to do is separate my audio files out. I'm going to resave my audio files separately and kind of get rid of some of the noise that's in there, hopefully, because I didn't really like the audio quality in my last two Andor reactions.
That he released J6. In fact, so much so that I was prepared to protest if he didn't.
Okay.
So when you say, are you okay that he's pro-crime? Sure, because you know what? We're changing the definition of what crime is, first and
You
foremost.
don't think stomping on police officers' heads is a crime?
I don't think it's no longer a relevant conversation anymore. You're
Really?
arguing, no, it's not, because you know what? Okay, have you seen the U.S. in the last 4 or 5 years?
Yes, I've
BLM protests.
for a
Have you
while.
seen? Okay, I myself have been involved in these protests. I've seen egregious things that you couldn't.
Would you look at that? I actually have viewers.
Being done to conservatives. It's not about that. It's about tribal warfare.
Okay.
That's where we're at in the U.S. I don't know where you're at in the U.K. You're from India, so
It's worth mentioning. Oh, he's from India. I don't think he's from India, but it's worth mentioning. Like, why are we at a point where it's tribal? It's one of those things where you're bullying someone. It's almost like a stop hitting yourself, or don't fight back, right? Why are you fighting back? Why are you getting aggressive? Why are you getting violent? Well, because you're kind of attacking me, right? Things have gone tribal because you made it tribal. There's a fire that we're all trying to put out because you started a fire, right? And it's sort of like it's a self-fulfilling thing that I find a lot of times with these kinds of individuals, right? These people, right? I'm kind of joking, but is they create like a self-fulfilling prophecy for themselves in which like the rest of the world is out to get us. Everything's tribal, everything's culture war, everything's class war, whatever. And because they project that energy out into the world, of course, everybody else is going to have like a negative energy or reaction back. But the other people are responding in self-defense, right? So you've created the environment that you said that you're doing all this extreme stuff for. You created the environment of hostility, of tribalism, which you said that you needed to have this overreaction for. That overreaction wasn't necessary. You created the conditions to make it, quote unquote, necessary. It wasn't necessary to begin with.
Not from India.
Oh, sorry, your parents are from India, so
I'm an American
you have
citizen.
your own stakes.
I'm an American, you know.
You're an American citizen?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know how you got that, but fair enough. Here's the thing.
Are you an American citizen?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But here's the
Not
thing.
sure how you got that. Okay.
Born here.
Okay.
Born here, and my family lineage is settlers from the 1500s, so I have some stake in the claim here, okay?
All right. By the way, does anybody actually use, among the 3 people that are watching right now, anybody actually use DaVinci Resolve? I did this the other day. I can't remember how to take this audio clip that I have and then export it out without exporting the whole project. I don't want to export the project. I just want to export this one audio file. I did this the other day. Oh, wait. Oh, export audio file. There we go. Okay, I found it. Never mind. We're good.
A little different than yours.
descendant.
I don't like this argument, by the way, that people make sometimes, like, oh, my family was from the colonial days, so I have a real stake in this country, blah, 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 right? Like, if we in the United States, and we should have this principle that you are not guilty for the sins of your ancestors, and you shouldn't be, right? You're not guilty for the things that your father did. You're not guilty by association. You're not guilty because your family member did X, Y, and Z. Then we also have to have the flip side of that, which is you don't get to have like stolen valor from people that were born, ancestors to you 1,000 years ago. You are not, just because you had a family member, decades ago, generations ago, who invented, I don't know, the computer mouse, does not mean you get credit for inventing computer mice. Doesn't mean that you are like the legacy of that, right? What are you doing to be the legacy of that? Did you go into engineering to design more mouses? Did you start working for the same company that your relative did? Or do you just claim that you are part of, the project that they had going on just by virtue of you being alive? Right? I don't agree with that whole mentality. I think it's a stupid mentality. But it's a mentality that doesn't really get questioned very often.
Of immigrants, settlers,
I didn't know.
colonialists.
Yeah,
You don't look,
colonials.
you don't look
yeah.
very Native American to me.
I am Native American. Whites
not.
are Native Americans. What are you
Sorry,
talking about?
you're not.
What are you talking about?
You're not.
Whites are Native Americans.
Really?
I think
What was
you're-
happening before the 1500s?
I think you're getting confused with it.
I don't mind going off on a tangent, but what was happening before the 1500s?
Calm down. I think you're getting.
What was happening before the 1500s?
There was indigenous people here that came here from
Do you know
Asia.
what indigenous means?
Listen, before
Indigenous
America,
people
let-
can't
are you
come
gonna let
from
me
somewhere
finish?
else.
Why do you ask a question if you're going to interrupt?
I'm not sure if you know what the meaning of indigenous means.
I do know what it means. It
Doesn't
means
sound
they
like it.
came here first, right? They came here from Asia by way of land bridge. Have an argument with Neil deGrasse Tyson or anybody else about that. I don't care.
Is he an
I
American?
genuinely don't care. Yes, he is.
Okay, just
so
checking.
my point is, okay?
Nothing to do with crime. So far, you've agreed with me that these people
Because
are
you're
criminals.
derailing, dude. I'm trying
You
to stay on
literally
track.
sat down and asked me where I'm from. I think you
I
derailed this
think you got
conversation from the
offended
get-go.
by that, but I'm because
I'm
I'm
not offended.
always
I'm just
curious-
wondering what it
because
has to do with
I'm
crime.
always curious.
We're going to talk about
why-
immigration. Don't worry. Later on, you can come back.
I hope so.
Right now, you're doing a very bad job of making the case that he's not pro-crime
I
and
just got a
pro-criminal.
round of applause.
I just got a round of applause from people that already agree with me. Wow, congratulations. You know what I mean? Like, who cares? Okay, do you want to override? mkv.l.wave already exists. Do you want to override? I don't know. I'm just going to say yes, whatever, fuck it. And then this one didn't, so I think the program saved both of the audio files it was working on. I think. Okay.
Applause. I could probably get another one actually if I asked for it.
Yeah, I'm sure you can from the people who agree with you, and they just want like instant, silly slam dunks. Okay, let's see. Bella M. Haha, no worries. I'm back, but I'm 10 minutes behind. Okay. No problem. Do your thing. I'm not even going to comment it, alright?
Wow.
So I don't think I'm
is this
doing
how
as
you
bad.
get rounds of applause? You sit in a room with 20 people who agree with you. Wow, amazing.
What did I say?
Amazing. That
Well,
must
wait
make you
till
feel
this
good.
comes out. You know what? I'm actually.
But I mean, substantively, right? Mehdi's right here. He's not really talking about the topic of conversation. This guy probably came in, and his whole thing is like not very. Like it's very obvious, and it's a very shadow facade that he's wearing. That he's here for like some kind of constructive debate around any other topic than immigration and ethnicity. He's not going to come out and outright say it, right? But this guy's probably a white nationalist. He probably wants the country to be all white like him. He probably considers anybody who's ethnically different to not, have legitimate claim to be in the country. And that's the whole reason why they're talking about Donald Trump is pro-crime and pro-criminal. Right here it says the top left, right? That is the topic of this segment. We're not even talking about that. This guy went immediately to, where do you come from? Where's your accent from? You're kind of different. Are you from India, right? Blah, blah, blah.
People who agree
You're
with
getting
you
this
applauded you.
emotionally outraged right
Wow.
now. This is great.
I love it.
Do I have to say anything at this point, or are you just going to
Please.
keep going?
No, please. Make your claim.
Well, my claim is that I don't care if it's pro-crime. You want to go back to the topic of conversation?
That's fine. We agree then.
So,
He's pro-crime
but
and you
I
don't
have
care.
a question for you. Do you care? about
I will say this. All right. I respect at the very least when these people are actually honest. Way back in the day, all right, I used to be a 4chan kind of person. I used to browse a lot of 4chan in my younger days. I discovered it when I was like 17. Unlike a lot of people, all right, I don't have like a 4chaners mentality. I went on the website and I'd argue with people a lot, but they didn't like change my perspectives on things. I still maintain kind of like my ideological integrity. Where was I going with this? Sorry. Oh, yeah. The point that I was going to make, though, is that there are a lot of like extremists on that website for sure, obviously, right? And actually, I did forget where I was going to go with that. This is what happens when you're trying to multitask, right?
Side of
Here.
the spectrum.
Yes.
Do you care about law being administered
Yes.
to the opposite?
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Okay. So I used to debate with like straight up like fascists, neo-Nazis. These are people who would just, yeah, I am, and I hate black people, I hate immigrants, I hate whatever, right? They would just tell you because they're anonymous on 4chan. There's no way to trace their comments back to who they are in real life. So like when people are under the veil of anonymity, they have a tendency to be a lot more honest about what they are and what they believe in. What I appreciated about those conversations, it sounds really weird, is that at the very least when I was talking with those people, I actually knew what their positions were. They weren't being dishonest about it. I didn't have to play this whole game, which I call like debate foreplay, where you're like, you're trying to get the person to actually say what they truly think and truly believe, and you're like, meanwhile, trying to parse through all this like innuendo and plausible deniability and rhetoric and talking points that they have to just get them to be like, okay, you don't really think this thing for this reason. Can you just say what your real point is? And to give an example of this, right? I was having a debate with somebody about illegal immigration, and they were like, if Democrats cared so much about illegal immigrants and like they're trying to exploit them and like they're not doing them any favors, they don't actually care about immigrants because these immigrants are like being paid under the table, low wages and everything like that. And it's like, okay, you're not having an honest debate with me. You don't want immigrants in the country, okay? You don't give a shit about their wages. You're trying to like deflect to, well, if you really cared about it, you'd care about their wages. Hey, you know what? If you actually asked me, if you wanted to increase their wages, I would be fine with it. But that's not the conversation that we're having. You don't care about that. You don't want them to increase their wages. You just want to kick them the fuck out. And if that's your position, fine. But like, make that position. Stop doing all this like Weasley stuff around the edges where we have to like debate nonsense about their wages, which you don't even really care about that issue. Just tell me like, hey, I don't want any of them in our country, blah, 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 and let's have an honest discussion about it. It sounds weird, but I respect more the people who could do that than the people who like, maybe they're not an out and out neo-Nazi, right? But they're like hiding so much about what they actually think and actually believe. Obviously, I don't actually respect like neo-Nazis and white supremacists and all that, but I, at the very least, I respect it more that they're actually just being honest and straightforward versus all this weasel word bullshit. It annoys the fuck out of me.
Yes,
And it's a waste of time. That's why I call it, I mean, not that foreplay is a waste of time or anything, but it is a waste of fucking time when we're like arguing shit that doesn't really matter.
Be pardoned. I think that Donald Trump shouldn't have pardoned 9 Republican members of Congress who were convicted.
And here, again, this is what I'm talking about. This guy would love to just dominate the conversation. That was the whole thing earlier when he issued kind of that veiled threat towards Mehdi Hasan. Oh, don't interrupt me because I have this whole thing. I need to stay calm, right? But Mehdi Hasan is what I've been trying to point out here. Very good at, hey, I'm not going to let you dominate the conversation, steer it towards immigration shit that we're not talking about. I'm going to keep bringing up points, right? And here's the thing. If you want to steer the conversation back, just make points. Make points that will bait them into having to respond, because the points are going to be so salient with the audience that the other person knows, hey, if I just let the point that they're making linger without having a response to it, that makes my side look bad. So Mehdi Hasan is going to shift back to the topic of the conversation, and he's going to bring up all these examples of how Donald Trump is pro-crime, and this guy is going to have to respond or just keep deflecting, at which point Mehdi Hasan can go, you're deflecting again. You're deflecting again. See how he's deflecting? Look at, he keeps deflecting. He doesn't want to talk about this, right?
Crimes. And I don't think Joe Biden should commit. I don't think Democrats should pardon Democrats.
Fair, but I don't think you understand where we are in the U.S. then.
I think I do.
No, because you're arguing from a position of like a U.S. that doesn't exist anymore. We're headed towards
nihilism. No laws, nothing matters.
It's not about
everyone's pro-crime.
It's not about that. It's that conservatives. Conservatives.
This is, by the way, this is a important tactic to bring up. There's a tendency, and this is kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where their side starts the fire of tribalism, and then they say, oh, well, look, everybody's tribal now, so this is where we're at, and we have to be tribal. And it's like, where are we at as a country? This is what this guy brought up. Where we're at as a country now, like the environment's different. Okay, why is the environment different? The environment's different is because you guys are forcing it to be there.
for too long. They've been playing it safe. They've been playing by the
Really?
law. They've been playing it
by
by the book.
So his argument now is that, everybody lies, everybody cheats, everybody breaks the law, so it doesn't really matter that our politicians break the law, right? First of all, I don't even buy the premise. Not everybody cheats and lies and breaks the law. Not every politician is literally a criminal, right? That's not actually true. But if you sow that premise among the population, when you're developing arguments, you have premise leads to a conclusion. That whole thing about like everybody's a criminal, everybody breaks the law, everybody's a liar is a premise that they're going to use to then later on justify the conclusion that it actually doesn't matter if Donald Trump and the Republicans are lying and cheating and engaging in political violence, because everybody does it, right? Everybody does it. But it's not really a true premise. The premise is unsound. It's false. And by the way, just logically, it is literal whataboutism. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that it's okay when you do it.
Yes, they have.
Maybe you missed the Bush presidency. Did you live here during the Bush years?
Conservatives are
Didn't
so
play by the law,
concerned.
George W.
Let me
Bush. Nor did
finish.
Ronald Reagan.
Let's be respectful to you. Let me finish.
I'm not sure you've been that respectful, but okay.
I'm trying to bring it back, so let's both bring it back.
That's
Okay.
good.
I'm conservative. Okay.
Really?
Let me tell you this.
I don't believe this guy's conservative, by the way. In the true sense of the word, I mean, the word has lost its meaning, but I go hard on conservatives a lot. The reality is that if you are like an old school, legitimate, principled conservative, I actually don't think I have too much of an issue with you. I can find you to be like a conscientious objector. The problem is that a lot of what we call conservatism in the U.S. has just become like far right, reactionary, fascistic, ultranationalist stuff. This guy seems to me probably very clearly to be probably a white nationalist. And then he's also justifying political extremism, violence, and law breaking on his side. In what world is that conservatism? That has gone well beyond conservatism at that point. The whole point about conservatism is you are supposed to be conserving, and you're very moderately making changes around the edges. You oppose, you're not supposed to, in principle, oppose change outright. The principled conservative position is that you oppose radical change without thinking it through, taking your time, considering the pros and cons, doing it like slow and steady and a measured change. That is what actual true, distilled old school conservatism is supposed to be. These people are not conservative anymore. They are political radicals and extremists. They have their, right-wing extreme position. They're willing to break the law. They're willing to engage in political violence for it. And they're willing to concentrate power within the executive branch and kind of steer us away from the way the law and the Constitution have been framed for generations in this country towards kind of this new model that they want to have. And hey, by the way, again, if that's your position, then just say that's your position and be honest about it, and let's have an honest discussion. That's the thing that frustrates me the most. We don't usually have honest discussions about this, though.
At this point, gloves are off, right? The left has made their point. They're willing to do...
the police force in Washington, the left?
Yes. Are you kidding me? The left? Are you insane?
Police officers.
Look at LA right here. You think those stand down? You
think the LAPD are a bunch of liberal Marxists?
No, but I think they listen to liberal Marxists who tell them what to do.
I feel like I don't even have to say much about this. Like your average person that, and by the way, this is really good, important debate tactic, is your response to claims the other side should be proportional to how serious those arguments are, right? You can lend more credibility to this argument by being like, well, wait a second, no, actually the police are blah, 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 blah. Your average person hears someone say something like that, like, oh, the police are responsive to the left wing, and your average person is just going to be like, I'm pretty sure most police officers, good or bad, whatever, are like going to lean a little bit right wing, a little bit conservative. To say that, the police are like in bed with the left or something, it's just silly. So I would just kind of dismiss that point kind of offhandishly. I'd just kind of be like, bro, no. Or if they say it, the police are like, I think that they work for the left or they respond to the left. Just, oh, okay. All right. Right. Just tonally signal to the audience that you think their point is so silly and so worth not debating, because your average person knows how silly it is that you're not even going to give it the time of day. Just like, oh, that's a silly point. If you want to think that, go for it, buddy. Right. The important thing about that is that you have to be sure that when you do deploy that tactic, that you've earned it, or at the very least that the point that they're making is so obvious to the audience to be silly and absurd. sometimes people try to deploy that debate tactic of, oh, that's so stupid, you're so silly, I'm not even going to debate that point. Meanwhile, it is a controversial point that a lot of people can go one way or the other on. You can't just abandon the debate at that point. You do actually have to dig into the details of that particular point and make your case to the audience. You can't just trust that the audience is going to be on your side there. You can only deploy that when you think the audience is going to kind of look at what they're saying and think like, oh, that is kind of silly.
I think they listen to who signs their paychecks at the end of the day.
Can I just check, because you're doing lots of little diversions.
Okay, so the liberal Marxists are writing their paychecks, right? I feel like this is the kind of dude who would say in a different instance, like the liberal Marxist, whatever, college activist students are the ones that aren't paying taxes. And the reality is, like 47% of U.S. Americans aren't paying net taxes anyways. And that, like, this is just not how government works. It's not like every you have 340 million Americans in the United States. I know some of those are kids, whatever. We'll call it, I don't know, 160 million adult Americans. I don't know what the number is. Those people are all paying taxes. Each individual is paying taxes. Therefore, the government institutions, the law enforcement, the judges and everything, they're working for them in the sense that they're getting money from those people, so they enact their policy, they carry out the law in accordance with what those people want. No, those are 160 million diverse or dispersed individual Americans in society, and individually, no one of those people are going to have like a huge influence on that law enforcement officer or that judge or whatever. Now, if you want to make the case that there's like this large influential power broker who is influencing them, okay, that's a little bit more of a like I could see that more, right? I'm not going to necessarily grant you that, but that's a completely different argument. Like this random 16-year-old protester who set a Waymo on fire is controlling the LAPD. No, they're not. Okay, come on, be real.
We both agree Donald Trump's pro-crime. You're just fine with it.
No,
Is that the position?
I don't.
That's what you've said so far for about 5 minutes.
I don't agree with your definition.
What's your definition of crime?
It doesn't
Stomping
matter.
on a police officer's head is not a crime. That's your
It doesn't matter. What is your definition of crime? Oh, it doesn't matter because he doesn't care, right?
crime. As the Native American.
I am Native American.
If you say so.
So, going back to the topic at hand, we have different definitions of crime because you're
That's
talking
convenient. There's
It's not-
That is really convenient, right? We have different definitions of crime. How about the law that's on the book that defines what crime is? How about that, maybe? I don't know, right? If you're going to call yourselves law and order, maybe we should go by what the standards of the law say about crime. Not, hey, it's a crime when your side does it, and it's not a crime when my side does it. Oh, that's really convenient. Congratulations.
country. It's called the U.S. Criminal Code.
You know what? Let's focus
That's
on
what
what
everyone
we
See, exactly.
You and I actually agree on a
Do
lot
we
more than
agree
you
that
realize.
people shouldn't stomp
They
on
don't.
police?
And by the way, when people say this, a lot of times they're being sneaky and snaky about it. Like, no, you don't agree on more than you imagine. You and him probably disagree on a lot of things, beginning with this guy here probably doesn't believe that crime should be defined by the law because they kind of just want to reinvent the law, reinvent the legal system in their image. They don't really care about what it actually says on paper right now. And Mehdi Hasan's going to argue from the position of what is the law on the books right now, what are the standards we're supposed to be following. That is a key disagreement. That's not, we all want the same things. No, we don't. Okay? This is a legitimate disagreement, a legitimate difference in opinion that's not going to be resolved by just like papering over it.
Police officers' heads. Can we agree on that? If
I'm
you don't
not-
agree on that, then I really think this conversation is kind of
No,
pointless.
because first of all, you're saying what? That the police have the authority, that they're given the authority. I don't accept the authority that's been given.
very
By the way, really important point to make about this debate. If you like the channel, subscribe, like, do all that crap, right? All right. Anyways.
I'm a conservative or pro-police.
Then you
Or
don't
we
know what a
redefine-
real. Hey, listen,
so
you're
we
in a room
redefine
with
crime.
juggernauts right now.
We
Okay,
redefine
I'm telling you right now,
conservatives.
you are going to be blown
I
open
mean,
if you think
yeah,
that my
if we're going to
position is
struggle with the
alt-right,
English
you
language
have
for the
no
next couple
idea
hours, then yeah,
what you're
we'll
up
struggle.
against right now. Okay.
100%.
Yeah. Newsflash: the conservatives are liberal to me. Okay. Neocon.
See, what did I tell you? Like when he's trying to position himself as, oh, I'm a conservative. Bro, conservatives are too liberal for you. That's how far right you are. When you say that you're conservative, you're being dishonest. You are far right compared even to conservatives. You think conservatives are too liberal for you.
Libertarians, all those mainstream people.
Libertarians are too liberal for him. Okay?
There might as well be leftists to me. Okay. That
Where does that leave you? Where does that leave you on the political spectrum? The conservatives are too liberal, the liberals are too liberal, the libertarians are too liberal. Bro, you're way off on an island by yourself at that point. You're not conservative. You're far right.
That's how far to the right I am. Do you understand my position? So when you
And I appreciate him being honest here, but the flip-flop, the downplaying it earlier before, the obfuscation, right? It all, like, this whole loop back around on itself just kind of highlights that this guy's bad faith.
Kind of guessed it when you
when you
said that.
say, about obeying police, why would I give the authority to police? Do you know here in America?
Do you think Donald Trump?
Why would I give the authority to the police? Well, who should you give it to instead, right? Here's the issue. When you don't have like a legitimate law enforcement apparatus, who is determining the law, who is enforcing the law, it's not legitimate anymore. He doesn't care about the police because he doesn't care about the law as written. He wants to just kind of have his little group, his little political faction, his little tribe, just make it up as they go along, just kind of redefine it as they go along.
Should be pardoning 9 members of Congress
Do you
who
know
committed
who-
financial crimes.
Let me see if I can remember
Are you
his name
pro
right, because
financial
it's so-
crime?
Do you know who
pro
Thomas-
financial crime?
Do you know
Alright,
who Thomas
pause.
Timbo is?
Pause.
I think the people who clapped you have voted you out.
Do you know who Thomas Kimbo is? Let's look at this guy. But I do think this is just kind of like a silly debate tactic that people use sometimes. Who the hell is Thomas Kimbo, and how's he relevant to any of this? I don't know who this guy's referring to. Is this a person? I have no fucking idea. But like, you shouldn't be looking at anecdotes. You should be looking at data, right? Anecdotes. We have a country of 300 million people. We have a population in the world of like 8 billion people. If you want to find an individual instance of anything, you'll find it. But that doesn't tell us whether or not it's like a widespread phenomenon, whether it's a widespread issue, or just a one-off scenario. I don't know who this Thomas Kimbo guy is. I don't know what point he was going to make about him. I don't know why I just Googled it again, like I'm going to find something different. I don't know. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he wasn't going to bring up like some kind of anecdotal case to try to then extrapolate like a generalization from. I'm going to assume that this guy was like a pertinent, relevant figure for something. I don't know.
All right. Head back to your seat. You've been voted out by the majority.
Nice to meet you.
Can you please?
I wouldn't shake his hand, by the way. I know some people are like, oh, you should be polite and everything. The thing is that guy's not polite. The things that he wants for society are not polite. This little like handshake is a fake sign of respect. It's a veneer of respect, while behind your back they're trying to stab you.
Please just hear me out. No, all work management platforms are the same. Monday.com is the one you'll actually.
Wow.
Hi
Hello,
there.
sir. How are you?
Hey, so I'm going to be as respectful about this as possible, but the truth is your claim is completely bad faith. You do not care about being anti-crime. You yourself are pro-crime. Your side is pro-crime because you're a progressive.
How am I pro-crime?
So I'll give you an example, right? So your side, not Donald Trump, has passed a series of laws in California. Let's go with California. It's where we are right now. It's where I'm from. I don't know. Are you from California?
No.
Or okay. So in California, for example, the state legislature, completely progressive, just passed a law that limits sex offender registration.
I don't like Jubilee's fact check. Sometimes they're missing context, or I don't know. It blows my mind sometimes with people who have like jobs where their job is to do this kind of stuff and they just don't do a good job of it. But let's see what they say anyways. California has a tier-based sex offender registry. Those who commit misdemeanors have to register for a minimum of 10 years, while those who commit more serious sex crimes have to register for 20 years. So I'm imagining that this particular legislation this guy's talking about, what a great still shot of him, by the way, is probably some tweaks to existing enforcement, or not enforcement guidelines, but sentencing guidelines for different kinds of like sex offender charges, whatnot. And it sounds weird, but in all seriousness, and to just be like, adult about this for a second, the reality is that there are, in fact, going to be different levels of severity of different kinds of sex offender crimes, right? You're going to have people that may be sexual harassment versus groping versus rape. None of these are good. They're different tiers of bad, right? And the punishment for them should be appropriate to that, right? Why would you give a rapist the same punishment that you give to someone that was just doing sexual harassment? The rapist probably deserves to have a way worse punishment than the person who just, I don't know, catcalled someone on the street. That's reasonable.
To 10 years. It was life before. That's pro-crime.
Okay, hold on. Let me see. What is...
So in California, for example, the state legislature, completely progressive, just passed a law that limits sex offender registration to 10 years. It was life before. That's pro-crime.
Okay, that's interesting. I myself am a progressive. I don't know if I support this or not. Right? There's this thing that conservatives don't like to be generalized. Everybody does a lot of generalization about what progressives think, and most of the time you're not actually hearing progressives themselves tell you what they think. I haven't looked into the details of this. I don't know if I'm in favor of that. Okay. But I would want to look into this more. It may be a legitimate point. I will give credit where credit's due. Maybe this is a legitimate argument. I do think sometimes some left-wingers, and there is a difference between left-wing and progressive, I think sometimes they go a little bit too far in trying to be really lenient and empathetic with criminals. I personally don't believe in just punishing people for the sake of punishment. I think that there should be I lean towards rehabilitative justice. And it's not because I just feel so bad for people. It's really because I take a dispassionate, logical perspective on it and go, okay, is this measure, is it reducing crime? Is it reducing victimization? Is it costing us resources? Is there ability to rehabilitate this person, making him a productive member of society rather than somebody who's just sitting in prison, right? Those are I think very reasonable, logical considerations to make. To that end, sometimes that means that, for example, I'm not for the death penalty. Why am I not for the death penalty? Because I actually think that if you created a crime that's serious enough to, get you life behind prison or the death sentence, I think it's actually a bigger punishment for you to have to live with your life, sit there and, sit in that corner and think about what you did, mister. But no, seriously, I think that you should have to live with what you did. I feel like getting an injection and then you're dead, I feel like that's the easy way out. But I'm not coming from that, I don't believe in the death penalty from the angle of, criminals, I feel bad for them, they made a poopsie, we should just let them do whatever they want. No. It is thinking about our resources, which, by the way, life imprisonment is cheaper than putting someone on death row. It actually costs more because of the whole appeals process, and they wind up spending a lot of time in prison anyways. So it's cheaper. You're less prone to have errors that the state makes with, sentencing the wrong person to death, which does occasionally happen. And I think it's just a worse punishment to have them sit there and think about what they did for the rest of their life. It's not just because I want to hug a tree.
The legislature in California, which is progressives again, has passed a law that says the voter-induced three-strike law is no longer absolute. If someone murders someone, stabs someone...
I would agree with that. I think the three strikes law, again, I'd have to look at the details. I would actually want to know the details of the three strikes law. Maybe I misunderstand three strikes law, but I think that it should depend on the type of crime that you're doing, right? They're you assaulted people 3 times. That's one thing. You shoplifted 3 times when you were absolutely destitute, poor, living on the street, and you were suffering from mental illness. You did that 3 times. Should that be a death sentence now because you did that 3 times? I think that's different than you beat the shit out of 3 different people on 3 different occasions, right? Those 2 things I don't think should be treated the same. So the idea that you're not doing the 3 strikes law, it's not necessarily applying. I'm not necessarily against that. Let me read this fact check. California voters changed the state's 3-strike rule in 2012 so that mandatory 25 to life sentencing was only imposed on serious or violent offenders. In 2020, and that's kind of what I'm saying, is that, if it's 3 strikes for a violent offense, that's one thing, versus 3 strikes maybe for I don't know, speeding ticket. I guess speeding ticket may not be considered a crime for these purposes, but you get what I'm saying. In 2021, the legislature ordered a mandatory resentencing for those with certain enhanced sentences, and I think that's okay, right? I'd have to look at the details.
A judge now does not
but
have to get them.
This isn't the same as being pro-crime. It's just saying we're looking at what are the punishments for the crime. Did the punishments fit the crime? And then we're adjusting that accordingly. We can have a reasonable disagreement, and I might even agree with him on certain particular points, hey, this particular policy I think is too lenient. Oh, you know what? I think you're right. Actually, this one is too lenient. I think this one's too lenient. Oh, let me look at this one. You know, actually, I think that's lenient enough. I don't have a problem with that, right? But it's not, oh, I'm pro-crime. It's different crimes require different levels of like punishments associated with them. It's not like everybody who commits any crime whatsoever should all receive the same punishment. They should all be like executed by, you know, guillotine and also shot at the same time and also injected just to make sure they're triple, double, quadruple dead, right? I think it's okay to look at different crimes and, you know, maybe you reduce some here and there. Like, take marijuana, for example. Marijuana used to be illegal for generations, and now it's becoming more normalized, more legalized across different states. There are people who are in jail because of marijuana offenses that today we would look at and we go, that's fucking insane. So if you were to look back at that and go, hey, you know, these group of people who are in here for like marijuana related charges, possession, we're gonna, you know, retroactively kind of reduce their sentences and put a program in to kind of get them out faster and reintegrate them back into society. I think that's reasonable, and I think most people would think that's reasonable. But if you're someone who tells me, oh, progressives in California, they let all these criminals off the hook, right? You would technically be true. Well, maybe not letting them off the hook, but you get the point. Like, you would be technically true that they reduce punishments for criminals, but you're not really being completely honest, because when you look at the particulars of that situation, it's like, oh, these are people who had possession crimes from 20, 30 years ago. This isn't the same as like, oh, liberals are trying to let, you know, violent rapists off the hook. Those are very different things.
That's a progressive law. That is not. That is pro-crime. You support that, don't you?
I actually don't support.
And I mean, it's not really pro-crime, right? Because the second layer of this is a discussion on whether or not you think reduced sentencing and stuff like that is going to increase the crime rate. If progressives' intent was to make it so that criminals commit crime easier, so that they could, I don't know, increase the crime rate, that would be one thing. But again, that's just not the same as we're looking at particular crimes and particular punishments and kind of making tweaks and adjustments to what, you know, may have been draconian punishments back in the day.
Sex offenders coming off a list. I think they should be on for life.
Okay, so you disagree with progressives.
So hold on. You and I both agree that sex offending is a bad thing, especially child sex.
Very good debate tactic from Mehdi Hasan here, which is, and a lot of progressives and liberals can learn from this. You don't have to defend the policy. It's just kind of like what I said before. I may or may not agree with him on some of these particulars, but without digging into it, I'm not going to know. But Mehdi Hasan can very quickly take the wind out of his sails, diffuse the momentum this guy thinks he's going to have by just saying, hey, you know what? You and I both agree that sex offenders should be on a registry. So I'm a progressive. I don't even disagree with you. So when you're saying that progressives are pro-crime, like, I'm telling you right here, I'm a progressive. I'm not for that. So what's your next point? What's your next argument going to be?
Sex offending, right?
It seems like you and I agree on that.
And what was the thing? Was he expecting Mehdi Hasan to defend it? And the reality is that sometimes, this is really unfortunate still, this guy, I'm not saying this guy's bad because of it still, but he looks crazy right here. There are going to be some liberals, some leftists, some progressives who reflexively just wind up defending a policy that they probably shouldn't. And he might have been expecting Mehdi Hasan to do that. And this is why I like Mehdi Hasan and I respect him, because Mehdi Hasan doesn't have that impulse. He's willing to go, hey, you know what, I think you're right about that, or I might agree with you here, or, you know, I might agree with you in principle, but let's look at the details. And it's okay to do that. By the way, it's okay for you to say, and I think people don't do this enough, and I think people think it'll have the opposite effect. It's good for you sometimes to say, hey, you know what, I don't know enough about that particular policy. Oh, I haven't really thought much about that issue. I'll have to think about it. Oh, you know, I haven't really thought about that. What are your thoughts on it? That's an interesting idea. You know, I'll have to think about it. You don't have to commit yourself to agreeing with them. You don't have to commit yourself to validating their position or their argument. You could just say, hey, you know what? I'll take that in consideration. I'll have to look at it later on. I'll do my research on it later on. Let me hear what your perspective is. That's kind of interesting. I'll have to think about it later. You're not agreeing with them. You're not disagreeing with them. You're not saying something where you don't really know what you're talking about. And I think it gives you credibility with the audience, because the audience sees this is a person who's willing to be honest when they don't know something, willing to be honest when, and to be open-minded and to have their opinions change. I think that goes a long way.
I agree on that. So I'm not here to debate the legislature of California. I'm here to debate Donald Trump being pro-crime. And I'm saying that Donald Trump...
Oh, this is a good point. the topic is Donald Trump pro-crime. The topic is not our progressive pro-crime. So I didn't even catch this, but this guy's trying to do like well, actually it's the progressives, right? And I think to a certain extent that's fair to bring up. Hey, if you're going to complain about Donald Trump, then we need to make sure that you're not being hypocritical about that. I think that's fair. But technically speaking, the topic of this debate, or this particular segment of the debate, is Donald Trump. Is Donald Trump pro-crime and pro-criminal? It says right here on the top left corner. That was the topic of this segment. Well, it's not our progressives, right? That's a different story. Whether or not you think or agree that progressives are or not against crime or anything, that's a question and has no bearing on whether or not Donald Trump himself is.
Was friends with Ghislaine Maxwell.
But see, this is me falling for the tactic that they use, and this is what I try to advise against, which is that they're going to try to steer the conversation away from the things that they don't want to talk about. And it's your role, your duty to get it back on track. Hey, you know what? We can talk about all the other stuff that you want to talk about in the world, but actually I want to bring it back to what we were talking about, what I want to talk about, which is Donald Trump pro-criminal? I'm not going to let you get off of that and deflect to something else.
Maxwell, who's the worst child sex trafficker of our lifetime. She's serving over 20 years.
Do
you know Ghislaine Maxwell?
Yeah, she's actually not. Jeffrey Epstein's the worst sex trafficker.
He's dead. I'm talking about people alive right now.
It's interesting, though, you didn't use his name, right? Wouldn't he be the one who did this?
Oh, great. I'm glad you brought.
Oh, he didn't bring up his name because clearly the whole reason that Mehdi Hasan brought that up was because he was trying to let Epstein off the hook, right? Obviously not, right? It's silly and it's pathetic that this guy tries to use that, and it shows that this is a desperate debate tactic at this point.
Okay. Jeffrey Epstein.
What does he think that Mehdi Hasan's response is going to be? Like, oh, I'm actually trying to cover for Jeffrey Epstein? He's just going to quickly diffuse that by just saying, well, yeah, obviously Jeffrey Epstein, because he was the one that was working with Ghislaine Maxwell, but Jeffrey Epstein's dead now. And also, if you want to bring up Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump was friends with him. Like, this all still kind of ties back to Donald Trump letting, these criminal, people off the hook or turning a blind eye to them. I don't know why you would bring that up and think that it was like some kind of slam dunk.
Before he died, did an interview with Michael Wolff. He's on tape. I don't know if you heard the tape. He says, my closest friend was Donald Trump. I was his closest friend. Elon Musk, I'm not sure if you've heard of him. He tweeted recently that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files. And
it's also worth bringing up. I don't know if Mehdi will bring this up, and a lot of people don't bring this up. In case you don't know this, Donald Trump 1.0, by that I mean the first term where Donald Trump won in 2016, so when he was serving from 2017 through 2020, Donald Trump hired a man by the name of Alex Acosta. I think he was, his transportation or his trade secretary, in his first term as part of his cabinet. Alex Acosta. So Alex Acosta was the United States Secretary of Labor. So Donald Trump had him as the Secretary of Labor. In case you don't know who Alex Acosta is, Alex Acosta was so let me back up a little bit. When Jeffrey Epstein was first discovered to have been, engaging in sexual acts with minors, right? There was an investigation in Florida, and I think it wound up dragging in like the FBI. So you have like the federal government now, I believe. Okay, I could have this slightly off, but it doesn't really matter. So the authorities started to get involved. They started investigating, and they were building a case against Epstein. Alexander Acosta, who was, so right here, in 2007 to 2008, he was a U.S. attorney. So once Alex Acosta, when this case wound up on his desk, Acosta approved a plea deal with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, a lot of people consider this plea deal to be kind of like a, what do you call it? There's a term for when you kind of let someone off the hook, what is it, like a sweet deal or whatever the term is, right? You're letting them, you're making a plea deal that is very, very charitable and kind of lets the other person off the hook. So Jeffrey Epstein was found at one point, the authorities were, on his ass basically. He disappears again for a while until he kind of pops up again, in like, I don't know what the years would be, but when your average person started to learn about who Jeffrey Epstein was, like, when was that? Was that like around 2015, 2016, right? Jeffrey Epstein wasn't really a household name in 2007, 2008, but the authorities were investigating him back then. He kind of dodges having this big old scandal, this big old case that gets brought against him, because Alex Acosta, the first time they were investigating him, makes a plea deal with Jeffrey Epstein. So I don't want to dive too much into this particular story, but hopefully right here. So the plea deal to a single state charge of solicitation. So it's a solicitation of a minor. Okay, that's quite, considering all the things that Jeffrey Epstein did, that's quite minor compared to what he could have and should have been charged with. In exchange for a federal non-prosecution agreement after Epstein's arrest in July 2019. So here's what I'm talking about. Between basically 2008 and 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was kind of off the radar again, and he was able to kind of go about his daily life. I think I watched a documentary on this. I think he was able to serve the majority of the time that he was supposed to spend due to this guilty plea, basically on house arrest with an ankle monitor. He didn't really face like serious jail time. He was able to kind of carry about his life for the most part. But then he pops up again when the internet starts seizing on the story, and people, start to, demand that something happened to Jeffrey Epstein. But basically, the point I'm trying to make is ask yourself, how does Jeffrey Epstein come under the scrutiny of law enforcement way back in 2007? Way before anybody online was talking about him, way before he was a household name, and why is it that nothing really happened to Jeffrey Epstein over that long period of time, even though the authorities knew about him? Well, because he had a plea deal, and the plea deal was given to him or negotiated with him by this guy, Alexander Acosta, who Donald Trump then places in his cabinet as Secretary of Labor during the Donald Trump first term. But it goes deeper than this, because Donald Trump has multiple connections with Jeffrey Epstein. It's not just Alexander Acosta. It's Dershowitz. I'm not going to spell this name right. Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz has been a lawyer for Donald Trump. He argued for Donald Trump in, trying to remember the cases here, for the first impeachment trial. Alan Dershowitz was representing Donald Trump for Donald Trump's first impeachment. But why does Donald Trump know Dershowitz? Where did Dershowitz come from? Where does Dershowitz was a prominent lawyer before representing Donald Trump in his first impeachment? So Alan Dershowitz was actually the lawyer for Jeffrey Epstein. Dershowitz, I believe, has been on the Lolita Express and on the island. And I think Alan Dershowitz recently made a statement. Let's see. Let's find past week. He made a statement recently. Also said the committee should be granted immunity. Oh, I think it's because Ghislaine Maxwell wanted to testify and talk about Epstein's client list or whatever. And I think Alan Dershowitz made a statement saying like, oh, they should let her testify. Cast out that grand jury testimony will yield answers on Epstein. Instead, Dershowitz with that the relevant information is sealed records by 2 or 3 federal judges in the New York courts. The information that hasn't been requested is going to be far more informative and far more relevant than the grand jury information. Grand jury information is narrowly tailored by prosecutors. Okay, so here we go with Ghislaine Maxwell. She knows everything, Dershowitz says. She is the Rosetta Stone. She knows everything. She arranged every single trip with everybody. She knows everything. By the way, why does Alan Dershowitz know all this? Because he was their lawyer. Donald Trump then hires him to be his lawyer on his first impeachment. And Alan Dershowitz winds up being like this talking head for Donald Trump, super supportive of the president. Oh, you guys are coming at him unfairly. These impeachments are all bogus. Donald Trump is being attacked by the deep state. I don't know if he literally says that, but he's been defending Donald Trump this entire time. Look at all these connections here, right? And if she were just given use immunity, she could be compelled to testify. I'm told that she actually would be willing to testify, and there'd be no reason for her to withhold any information. I am curious, though, why would Dershowitz even be supportive of the idea of Ghislaine Maxwell testifying? Because I've always just kind of gotten the notion that Dershowitz is kind of tied up in this himself, and that he would be concerned about his name, not like being leaked, but being implicated in things, unless maybe it is the case that Dershowitz himself wasn't actually really involved in any kind of like diddling of minors. It's possible that Dershowitz is just a straight up opportunist. He doesn't really care about like what's happening to people. He doesn't care about whether or not Donald Trump should have been impeached. He doesn't care whether or not Epstein should have, gone to jail or whatever. But he just sees opportunities to take on high profile cases and get paid, buku bucks by these wealthy individuals who need to be represented in court. Meanwhile, Alan Dershowitz doesn't really care once the trials have wrapped up and everything, because he's made his money and he's not really. That's a possibility. All right, I'm starting to engaged in a little bit of conspiratorialism right there now. But to be clear, I'm not saying that is the case. I'm trying to game out like what is his angle, because I'm actually surprised that he would be so willing to have Ghislaine Maxwell testify. Not that he's in control of it or anything, but he seems to be supportive of it here. And that makes me think that maybe he's confident that he's not going to be implicated in the Epstein files, or at the very least, maybe he's a lawyer, so maybe he thinks that he can argue his way around it. But I also wonder, like, he seemed to be very on board with Trump, the past couple of years. Has their relationship soured recently? I know Trump is known to not pay, pay his contractors, pay his lawyers and stuff. Is it possible that there's been a falling out? Is it possible that Dershowitz has changed his mind on things recently? I'm curious what's going on there. Anyways, that was a long diversion. Let's get back on track.
Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the right-hand woman of Jeffrey Epstein, when she was on trial for child sex offending, which you and I...
Okay, hold on. We have from Bella M here. Is Alan a lawyer for Israel? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't even know what that would mean. I mean, Israel's its entire country. I don't know what it would mean to be a lawyer for Israel. Do you mean like is he like a lawyer from Israel? Is he Israeli? I believe he's American. Alan Dershowitz. Let's see this again. And I don't really know if he has any specific ties to Israel. By the way, I'm just going to put that out there. I'm not one of those people who are like conspiratorial about like Jews in Israel or anything. If you think I am, you have the wrong impression. I'm just to be clear, I don't like Netanyahu. I've been very vocal about that for a very long time, and I don't like the way they're persecuting their war with the Palestinians. I think that they are one side of a two-sided coin that is responsible for that issue, that conflict being intractable. Anyways, right? I don't know about him being tied to Israel in any way. As far as I know, he's just an American attorney lawyer. Says he's based out of New York City. So.
Opposed to, Donald Trump stood up and said, good luck to her, I wish her well. So yeah, that makes him pro-crime and pro-criminal if he's being soft on child sex traffickers like Epstein. No, I'm saying he was friends. He was friends with Epstein. You haven't seen the videos? They danced together, partied together. Epstein said I was his closest friend.
He's not supported the pedophilia part. The only people supporting pedophilia
that's not true. Trump gave a speech about 20 years ago where he said, Epstein's a great guy. He loves young women. A lot of them are very young. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, laugh, laugh. So yeah, I think he's pro-crime and
yeah, and that's a quote that I was thinking about this earlier. I didn't really bring it up, but that quote is kind of weird in context, right? Because you could look at that quote without any of this other information and just think like, oh, maybe they're talking about like 20-year-old women, 21-year-old women. Some guys are kind of weird about that. Like, oh, I'm going to target like these women who are technically legal, but they're like 40, 50 years younger than me. That's one thing. But in the context of knowing now that we know that Jeffrey Epstein was, basically trafficking minors, that recontextualized that quote by Trump where Trump says, I hear he's very into like young women. I don't know. It's a hell of a coincidence.
Pro-criminal.
So you think he's pro-crime for having a friend who's do you have any friends who are criminals?
Not that I know of. Certainly not child sex offenders. No, do you?
No, of course not.
Okay, so we're both in agreement again. So why are you defending Donald Trump?
If it came out tomorrow that one of your friends was a child sex trafficker,
you know what I'd do?
You'd stop being friends with them.
Yes. And I wouldn't say. And then I'd go
on TV and I would say, oh look, Mr. Hasan was friends with this guy 10 years ago. Therefore, he's pro-child sex trafficking. What if Mr. Hasan
said, I wish them well when they're on trial? Wouldn't you ever go at me for that?
You wish your friend well on trial?
Yeah, child sex trafficking.
You wish your friend well when they're on trial, and this guy looks incredulous. He looks incredulous about that notion. Bro, we're talking about your friend who is raping children. Okay? No, at some point you don't owe it to your friend to support them. There has to be a point where you stop supporting your friend. Otherwise, is this guy's whole ideology is that, oh, if you're my brother, if you're my friend, if you're my tribesman, then we're going to defend you regardless of what you do? That's insane.
I wouldn't wish someone well, but that's
Donald
your
Trump
gotcha.
did.
That's your gotcha.
It's a pretty big gotcha.
He wished a friend
pretty
well.
big gotcha.
Okay,
he praised the
what you're really trying to do right now is you're trying to get back to Donald Trump on a personal level.
Elon Musk says his name.
What's his policy?
Oh, you want to talk policies?
Yes.
So when he left office in 2020, he left behind the highest murder rate for over 100 years.
He left behind the highest murder rate? That is the most bad faith claim you could possibly make.
It's a fact from the CDC data.
You know what? Here's why it's bad faith.
Can I finish a sentence? And then you...
By the way, so we got Willie Sosanto. I just stumbled upon your stream and wanted to say I really appreciate how clearly express your thoughts and your You're welcome. I'm kind of new to all this. I'm not new to debate or to politics, but I'm new to this whole thing. If you guys like it, please subscribe. Please like it. I'm trying to grow my channel. hopefully kind of get some of these ideas and opinions out to the larger ecosystem of things out there. With that said, I will have more stuff in the future, and I haven't really had much of a chat audience before in the past. Obviously, I'm reacting to this video. I'm not going to switch gears right now, but in the future, or maybe when we wrap up with this, if you guys have other stuff you want me to react to or respond to, I will. But let's continue on with this.
You're just lying to people. Donald Trump.
I'm lying?
Yes,
Can I finish the sentence?
Okay. Yeah, okay. So Bella says, oh, I looked it up. I thought he was a lawyer in Israel versus South Africa case, but I was mistaken. He was interesting, though, and I truly didn't want to go into conspiracy theories. No problem. I'm not trying to accuse you or anything. I felt like I needed to clarify because other people online have their own implications and stuff like that. It wasn't really directed at you. I'm not really familiar with this Israel versus South Africa case. Is that the case that was brought up to the UN about I think Israel was accused of some sort of human rights violations or genocide in Palestine. I think it was brought by South Africa. I think that's what you're talking about. I don't really know the details of that particular case too much. It is an interesting topic. Maybe that's something we can look into in the future. But anyways, let's continue on with this.
Trump does not cause the murder rate. Murder is a state-level crime.
Hilarious.
Gavin Newsom is more responsible for the murder rate than Donald Trump is.
This kind of stuff gets thrown around a lot. California, Gavin Newsom, and then because people don't challenge it, because it gets repeated so often, people just take it for granted. I would ask, but this is a bit of a tangent. Maybe he probably doesn't want to go on a tangent here. How is Gavin Newsom responsible for the crime rate? Gavin Newsom, by the way, I'm not like a gigantic Gavin Newsom fan or anything. I just think it's really weird how like people treat him like. It's funny because the left will treat Gavin Newsom like he's not far right, but like he's conservative. The right will treat Gavin Newsom like he's the most crazy socialist left-winger in history. The reality is that Gavin Newsom is relatively moderate. I know that sounds weird to some people, but it is true. If you actually look at his legislative record, if you look at like some of the policies, some of the things that he's vetoed in the past, he is decently progressive guy. Okay, but he's not super progressive, and he will make concessions. He will make compromises in order to kind of be pragmatic, so to speak. You can fault him for that. You know, if you're someone who says, I don't like him because he doesn't go far enough with the things that I want him to do, because he's trying to like capitulate to these different interests, okay. But the reality is that he is in the mold of a politician who tries to kind of balance the different interest groups that he's trying to appeal to. But keep in mind, when you talk about this, Gavin Newsom has been governor. So he was lieutenant governor. Lieutenant, that means like second in command. I think it was under Jerry Brown from 2004 to 2011. He didn't become the actual mayor of California until January 2019. So 6 years ago. A lot of times when they talk about Gavin Newsom did this and California is this way because of Gavin Newsom has been governor for 6 years. You will understand, right? I hate the way we talk about politics in the modern day because we act like we're too stupid. We act like we're children. We're all adults. Let's be honest here. We know that whatever issues California faces, what other trends have been going on in California, they're most likely going to be multi-decade, multi-generational things that kind of, build up over long time periods. Sure, there might be some isolated particular policies where you can look at and see like, okay, the time window for this is a little bit more contracted. Sure, right? But crime in California has been a thing for a long time. You're telling me that just since 2019 it became an issue? No, right? That's silly. To say that Gavin Newsom is the reason why you have crime in California is silly. And furthermore, right, if I look up the crime rate in California, you're probably going to see that it's been decreasing over time. And the reason why I have this impulse is because crime rates have been dipping globally since the 1990s. So global crime rates graph. This is an important thing for you guys to know, by the way. We feel like crime has been increasing because our exposure to crime has been increasing, because social media has increased the access we have to seeing sensational things. Us having, a camera that we drag around with us everywhere that we go makes it so that people can film and take videos of all the crazy things that go on every day. Our access to the sensational things that go on in society has increased. But the actual incidence, the rate at which sensational, crazy crime things are happening has been decreasing over time. When it comes to crime specifically, so here we go, global crime rates 1990 to 2016. You had an uptick in the 90s. So you could see here in this graph. Let me actually pull this up because you guys might not see it in the way I have the windows cut up. Okay. So you see like 1990, you have this huge uptick. It almost looks like an exponential curve here. You see 1993, it hits a peak. If you go back and watch movies from like the 80s and 90s, you could see like their envisionment of the future was like overrun with like these gangs. They're kind of funny because the gangsters they had in those old movies were so like they're so quaint and just kind of like silly. Like let me look up this real fast. This is a great movie, by the way. What's that Jackie Chan movie? Jackie Chan, was it Bronx or something? Is it a Bronx movie? What is it called? Rumble in the Bronx. Okay. Rumble in the Bronx is like a good example of your stereotypical gang member from a 1990s, 1980s at like a movie. Okay, so it's a 1996. Rumble in the Bronx gang. They're the kind of guys that, you know, they walk up on the like the guy that they're gonna bully and they're just like, and they got like their whole crew behind them and they're like, they got like spiky hair and they're just like, I grew up in California. I grew up in an area of California that has like a high gang population. Gang members absolutely do not look as corny as they do in movies from the 90s. They were like doing backflips. They got all this like zany style about them. Look at them. These are the gangsters. These are the gangsters. Look at those gangsters. By the way, Jackie Chan movies are fucking awesome, aren't they? Anyways, I mean, go down a whole rabbit hole of this, find like good examples of how like cheesy their depiction of gang members were back in the day. By the way, this is how gang members, this is how crime used to be before Gavin Newsom turned crime in California into this. Gang members used to be funny, they used to be quirky, they used to be comical little guys, and now they're this. All because Gavin Newsom in 2019 took over. Isn't that crazy? I'm joking, but global crime rates have decreased. We had a peak in 1993, and you see it's been on a steady decline ever since. If we look at California, I'm willing to bet that the trends are pretty much going to be basically the same. So here we go. Look at violent crime. Pretty low. I mean, it's already low. You can't really get much lower, but it is technically speaking lower than it was in the 90s. Property crime and all crime, part 1, whatever the fuck that means, has significantly decreased since the 90s. So California, does it have a problem with crime? Sure. Any amount of crime over 0 is going to be quote unquote a problem with crime. But the reality is that crime rates have been dipping pretty much everywhere, including California. There's work to be done, but it's not because Gavin Newsom became mayor at one point in time. That's silly. Okay, let's see. My first language. Okay. So Federico Molina, Newsom platform, Charlie Kirk, and Steve Bannon. He's a right-wing centrist. So I think the whole point that Gavin Newsom has been doing, and I think is lost on a lot of people, is he does have, which by the way I think is a little, no one, I'm surprised the right hasn't brought this up yet. I'm surprised the right hasn't run with this talking point of, what's Gavin Newsom having a podcast for? Shouldn't he be working on California? California's up in flames and there's gang members shitting in the streets and Gavin Newsom has this podcast. He's wasting his time on a podcast. I'm surprised they haven't run with that talking point yet. I just created it. Maybe they're going to run with it now. But I think what Gavin Newsom was trying to do, whether you agree with it or not, whether you think he did a good job or not, was I think what he was trying to do was he was trying to bring these people onto his podcast, talk with them, have like a civil debate or whatever. Because what I think he's trying to do is I think he's trying to build up his ability to, number one, debate those people. If he runs for president in 2028, it's going to be a benefit to him if he is familiar with their talking points, familiar with how to engage with them, and familiar with how to debate with them. There's no substitute for experience. The reason I talk so confidently is because I have a lot of experience debating all kinds of different people. A lot of liberals made the mistake in the lead up to like 2015 when right-wingers started to dominate online political discourse and debate. A lot of liberals just did not engage with and did not debate with the right, and so they didn't know how to. They would get blindsided by arguments that the right would bring up. They'd get flustered in the middle of it. I think what Gavin Newsom is trying to do is he's trying to get used to their arguments or talking points and practicing engaging with them. So yeah, I mean that's basically what I wanted to say on that.
That's hilarious. So Donald Trump's not responsible for murder rate, but other politicians who are Democrats
Yes,
are.
because it's
Everyone
a state
can see
level
your
law.
partisanship.
That's like saying no. I'll say Republicans are too. State governors who are soft on crime are the ones that are responsible for murder rates. Let me finish a sentence.
When Donald Trump left office.
So, I mean, I would bring up here, well, if crime rates are reducing over time, are you saying that they're responsible for the reduction in crime rate? Right? Because you can't have it both ways. If you're going to say that governors, these politicians, whatever, they're responsible for murders and crimes, you're saying that whatever policy or whatever is having an effect on crime. Okay, well, I'm looking at the chart here. The chart says the rates are decreasing over time. So are you saying that they're responsible for the decrease? No, because this isn't really like a true, honest, rational argument that you're making. This is just kind of like a silly gotcha kind of thing.
Between 2019 and 2020, according to data from the CDC, from the FBI, from Pew Research, there's a 30% increase in the murder rate between 2019 and 2020. It was the single biggest.
You guys, what happened between 2019 and 2020? What was going on during that time period? What would be different about 2020 versus 2019 that would increase the crime rate? Man, what was it? Was there any kind of like widespread social phenomenon that was going on during that time? Oh yeah, COVID. Whoa, that's crazy, right? Because the reality is, and this is the same thing, you're going to find an uptick in crime globally during the COVID pandemic. I believe that this was the case, right? Global COVID crime rate. I'm not sure if we get what I want here. Impact of COVID-19 pandemic on crime. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted crime and illicit economies such as organized crime, terrorism, street crime, online crime, illegal marketing, smuggling. I just want a quick. Consistent with these findings, the global has stated the policy brief. The pandemic has caused a decrease in some. Oh, never mind. I was wrong. While providing new opportunities in other areas. Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, so some crimes increased, some of them decreased, is what this is saying, causing a change in organized criminal economy that may be long-term. The report says that some criminal organizations could take, but this is specific to organized crime, right? Has impacted illicit. Okay. It's probably going to come down to, I don't think I'm going to get like a simple answer in here. I don't want to dig into this too deeply. It's probably going to, probably what we're going to find here, some crimes increase, some decrease, but it did have an impact. I mean, this is a studied phenomenon that we had changes in what we typically see with crime as a result of COVID-19.
Biggest jump in the murder rate since 1905. So he's pro-crime and pro-criminal.
Who's doing the murdering?
The murderers.
So aren't they responsible for the murder rate?
Oh, see what he did there? Did any of you guys catch that? When he was talking about California, he was attributing Newsom as being responsible for the murder, for the crime. Mehdi Hasan brought up, oh, there was an increase in crime under Donald Trump's term. Therefore, is Donald Trump responsible for their crimes? To which point this guy says, well, who caused those murders? Oh, the murderers did. So the murderers are responsible. Donald Trump's not responsible. Notice the contradiction there. When he's attacking a Democrat, it's not, oh, the criminals who committed the crimes are responsible. It's, oh, the Democratic politician was responsible. When it's Donald Trump, when it's the Republican, it's, oh, Donald Trump's not responsible. The criminals are responsible. By the way, the whole point that Mehdi Hasan is bringing this up isn't, I don't think Mehdi Hasan believes that Donald Trump is responsible for crime. I think Mehdi Hasan was trying to illustrate the hypocrisy and how dishonest that argument, how this guy doesn't even really believe that argument that he's making. He's just bringing that argument up because he thinks, it's going to convince some people.
What?
Why did it go up on his watch?
Gee, that's
very bad.
That's
he's
a real
very bad
hard
at fighting crime.
That's a real hard one to figure out, right? We shut down the whole economy during COVID. We told everyone they couldn't go out unless it was to violently protest. We told people that if a cop tries to arrest you, that cop's probably going to get charged with murder.
No, I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it.
Right,
but the
so
pandemic didn't finish in 2020.
What?
The pandemic didn't finish in 2020.
You asked why the murder rate went up.
And yet, if we're going to play the what about game, you guys blame Joe Biden for crime for years.
What Joe Biden actively induces policies that are pro-crime. I'm asking
you. So does Donald Trump. Okay.
Name the policy that's pro-crime.
I'll name one right now.
I've asked you for like 10 minutes.
I'll name one
Please
right
do
now.
that.
No, you haven't actually. You talked
What,
about
some of-
California legislatures. He pardoned violent criminals
not-
who then went
that's
on
not a
to
policy.
commit
He
other
did-
crimes. You don't think releasing violent crimes into
A
the
pardon is
community?
a one-time thing. What's his policy
know-
he has pushed? Name a law he
Hold
has
on,
signed.
a pardon
What
is a
law has he
one-time
signed?
thing. Is a policy is not one-time
That's
thing.
like Jimmy Carter pardoned the
You
draft.
guys
Listen,
may want to dodge January 6th, the pardons.
I'm not dodging that.
Then
Jimmy
deal with
Carter,
it. Did you agree with
I'm
them?
gonna right
Do
now.
you agree with them?
Jimmy Carter
Do you
pardoned
agree with
draft
the pardons?
dodgers. Does that mean his
I don't,
policy was
I don't
no one
support
has to...
Jimmy Carter. Do you
Okay.
support the pardoning of people who went on to be prosecuted for sexually abusing a 7-year-old child, illegal gun possession, reckless homicide?
Now, see,
These are
there's
people
more
who
bad faith.
released.
See,
These are
there's more
people who
bad faith.
released from
He
prison.
didn't pardon someone for sexually abusing a
No, but
child.
they went on to be.
Well, I do think the point that he's making here is fair, is that the pardons weren't related to those, I guess maybe you would call them ancillary crimes. The pardons were related to the charges with January 6th. But I think the reason Mehdi Hasan brings up, he's trying to illustrate like contradictions in the way that this guy is talking about these issues when it comes to Democrats versus Republicans. I do think that if you are pardoning people for crimes related to January 6th, you are saying basically that you are allowed to engage in political violence for the Republican Party that we're not going to punish. And you are creating an atmosphere where you're telling people it is okay for them to engage in crimes on behalf of like their right-wing Republican ideology. I think that's fair to say.
Someone for rebelling against the government that they believed had rigged elections. That's what he pardoned them for. He didn't pardon them for...
Rebelling against a government because they think they rigged elections. That's one way of saying it. Another way of saying it is that these are people who were violating the law to try to steal an election and engaging in violence against government officials, police officers, in order to achieve that end, right? When he characterizes it as they were rebelling against the government, the image that you have in your head is like Star Wars, oh, these are the rebels that are fighting the tyrannical regime. These weren't people that were fighting for truth and freedom. These are people who were fighting to circumvent the results of an election based on lies that they were told about the election, that the election was stolen. The Trump administration, people in the Trump orbit, right-wing influencers, they failed over and over and over again for months to produce any evidence, and they lied, and they would continue lying, and they get called out on their lies, and they would just make up new ones about the election being rigged. So when these people committed crimes, in order to rebel against the government, they weren't doing so as like freedom fighters for some good cause. They were just breaking the law to circumvent a democratic, process to maintain control and power, because they had like a sense of entitlement to it.
Child abuse.
But they were criminals who committed those crimes. He let them out, so that means the crime rate goes up.
So you say they're criminals because they did the crime, right?
Yeah.
Would you extend that to illegal immigrants, that they're all criminals because they committed a crime? I have a feeling your position
the Supreme Court, we're going to talk about immigration.
Someone who's illegally entered the United States, not a criminal, but somebody who...
This is an interesting question. I think it depends. I'm not sure. I think with illegal immigrants, depending on how you get into the country, like if you get here legally but then you overstay a work visa, I'm not sure if that's technically a crime. That might just be like a civil infraction. And I think crossing the border illegally, then applying for asylum, I think your asylum claim, I think the way that the law is written, you are allowed to do that as long as I think afterwards you apply for asylum and then you basically stay current with, whatever organization oversees your asylum claim. So I don't know if those are technically like crimes in the same way. It sounds weird to say that, but there's a difference between like civil infractions, misdemeanors, felonies. These are all different kinds of crimes. There's different levels of severity with it. But like I could grant them, sure. Like, hey, if they broke the law coming here, then sure, they broke the law. It was a crime, right? Sure, why not? What do we do about that? Separate question.
The Supreme Court, not according to the Supreme Court of the United States.
The Supreme Court has said that anyone who enters the United States illegally is not a criminal.
And we can jump to future claims.
Can I get the case
We can
site?
jump to 20. You want to get the case?
The case site, please. You said the Supreme Court
the
said...
citation of the case.
Yes, that entering the United States illegally is not a crime.
It's called Arizona versus United States 2012.
He wasn't expecting him to know that.
Go look it up.
Pause. You've been voted out by the majority.
I'm not super duper familiar with this case. I don't really want to look into it right now, but if I had to guess, this is probably related to that whole thing about what I'm saying, where I'm not sure when an immigrant crosses the border illegally if that's actually considered like a felony or a misdemeanor or a civil infraction. I do think that, if you cross the border illegally, I don't think we should encourage that. I don't think that we should be doing that. If you think that we shouldn't have that as a rule, then change the rule. But I think that we should enforce the law as it is, as it is defined. If you have an issue with the law, then we have a process for changing the law. I think that's the way that we should be doing things. But that said, again, and I said this before, different crimes require different punishments. Crossing the border illegally, but you come here and you work and you pay taxes and you're not causing any other crimes, you're not causing any violent crimes. Because by the way, immigrants, illegal immigrants specifically, commit crime at a lower rate than the native U.S. population. I'm not talking about them crossing the border. I'm talking about crimes that they commit while they're here. They commit crime at a lower rate than your average U.S. citizen, and they commit crime at a lower rate than your average legal citizen or legal immigrant. Not legal citizen, legal immigrant. It goes U.S. citizens, legal immigrants, illegal immigrants in order of who's committing the most crimes. Illegal immigrants commit the least amount of crimes per capita, and then legal immigrants, and then U.S. citizens. If their crime is that they cross the border illegally, but otherwise, like, they're productive members of society, they're not causing problems, then does that illegal border crossing warrant beating the shit out of them? Shipping them to a torture prison overseas? I don't think so, right? Like, you don't have to go, like, it's no crime or it's the worst crime in the world. There's a lot of things in between, in the middle of those two things, those two extremes.
Majority, please return to your seat.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
No.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you, sir?
Nice to meet you, Mehdi.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you. I really just more want to get an understanding. When you say pro-criminal, what do you mean?
I think you just said it, right?
Confronted with people who've committed criminal acts, Donald Trump has been either soft on them, friendly with them, pardoned them, and of course, let's not forget, we've got 5 minutes left. I'm surprised it hasn't come up earlier. He's a convicted criminal himself, sitting in the White House.
Okay.
I was waiting for when he would bring up this point.
You're saying
I appreciate that.
every time that he's been confronted,
Not every time. I didn't
most
say the
times,
words every time.
most times,
A lot of the time.
a lot of the times,
Yes.
he's leaned towards criminal activity.
I didn't say criminal activity. He has committed crimes.
Endorsed criminal.
He's been indicted for
Correct.
88 different criminal offenses in 4 different jurisdictions by 5 different grand juries. He was convicted himself on 34 different criminal offenses by a jury.
I just want to be fair, because I don't need to exaggerate. Sometimes when you exaggerate, you put yourself in a precarious position that people will nitpick later on. He does have 34 counts, and he was charged with 88 crimes, but these were kind of related to basically the same case, right? So these are 34 counts within the same case, right? These are 34 counts of falsifying business records. So basically, he committed the crime of falsifying business records. I don't think you should. I think if you did do it, then you should face the punishment for it. Okay, again, it doesn't mean you need to be executed, but it also doesn't mean you get to just commit crimes, blasé, and no one cares. But I do want to clarify that these are basically related to the same charge. I personally believe that he was also guilty of electoral fraud. That case never really got to fully be adjudicated because he won election, and basically those have been tabled now. And I think he was also guilty of the documents case, basically stealing government records and failing to produce them. Trafficking them, too. I don't know if the technical term would be trafficking, but he instructed his staff to actually move them when he knew that the authorities were coming to, I don't know if the word would be sequester them or get them back.
Of his peers, but let's park that for a moment.
Okay.
Separate to his own crimes, when confronted with the crimes of others, or the alleged crimes of others, for example, a Chinese crypto billionaire called Justin Sun, who was being investigated for market manipulation, Trump dropped the case, invited him to the golf course, invited him to the White House,
plenty of examples,
and the guy
plenty of
invested $70 million in Trump's cryptocurrency.
So what I want to ask you
That's
this,
pro-crime in my
so
view.
Is it possible, because remember, the burden of proof's on you, right? You have to prove. Is it possible?
Oh, you just did.
All these things that he's done.
Your job now is to
pro-crime.
Yeah.
Is there
have
some
a
other reason
retort.
for the doing it? There's other justification. For example, let me give an example.
What is the justification, though, right? By the way, now your argument isn't that Trump isn't pro-crime. Now your argument is he is pro-crime, but he has a good reason for it. Those are two different things.
Well, then you can rebut it.
the J6.
Yes.
Is it possible that he could have done this
Yes.
to unite the country, to move past, to go to
Unite the country. The sense of entitlement and the lack of self-awareness to say something like this. When he says unite the country, he's saying appease my side. What he doesn't even like imagine in his mind is that a move like that is fundamentally divisive because the rest of the country doesn't want your political faction to be allowed to just commit crimes and try to steal elections from the rest of us and get away with. That is not healing and uniting the country. That is you guys giving preferential, favorable, unfair treatment to your side. That's not unifying because you're basically snubbing the other half of the country and you are justifying political violence and cheating on behalf of your faction in opposition to the other faction. That's not unifying.
a new chapter? If it's even possible, I think you would have to admit that there's another possibility, therefore he's not pro-crime, at least in possibility.
So let me agree and disagree.
Yep, okay.
So I agree with you that the intent could be different. I don't think Donald Trump was sitting there saying, how can I increase the level of murders? Let me release some murderers.
Right.
I'm not saying he did that on January 6th. I don't think he was trying to unite the country. That's where we disagree. That's bullshit. In fact, he divided the country further. But intent doesn't really matter to my claim. If he's releasing violent criminals,
Wait.
it doesn't
Intent
matter.
doesn't matter?
No, he's pro-crime and pro-criminal.
No, but that's a big indictment to say pro-crime. That means
If I'm
he's
confronted,
for crime.
Had the microphone muted. I want to put a little poll in chat. I'm curious with you guys. What is your political affiliation? Are you a centrist? Are you a leftist? Are you right wing? Are you libertarian? Shoot, I don't think it gives me any more options than this. Okay, we're going to have centrist, we're going to have liberal. I know some of you aren't liberal, you're left wing, some of you aren't. You're not conservative, you're right wing, but you understand, like, you're going to have to pick the one that's closest to you because it doesn't give me the option to make more options here. So you're either centrist, liberal, conservative, or libertarian. Those are the options. Curious what your guys' political affiliation is. I imagine if you guys are watching, most of you are probably going to be liberal or leftist or something.
Well, he is, because for example, I gave an example.
No. It could be possible.
I didn't
Okay, sorry,
interrupt you.
forgive me. Yep.
Your friend earlier, your ally, said, where has he done stuff that's increased the crime rate? I'm telling you, people have been pardoned who have been convicted on multiple other crimes. These people who we pardoned had previous criminal records. They were not just some folks chilling around go, we're against the takeover of our country, we're opposed to rebellion. A lot of these people were already hardened criminals, militia members. He looked at those people and said, you know what? They've been convicted, in many cases by Republican judges, but I'm going to let them out. Yeah, that makes you pro-criminal.
Is it possible?
Very much so. And if Joe Biden had done it, you'd be attacking him.
Sure. Is it possible that their conviction was part of a plea? It's like, oh shit, I can't get out of this, so I got to take a plea deal.
Some of them, maybe.
A lot of them, maybe.
Others we saw with our own lying eyes on tape, battering police officers. Did you watch live?
My response to this would just be, is it possible that they're not, right? Why don't you actually, if you're going to make that case, why don't you actually bring up examples of this, right? Because it's really easy to just go, oh, all these people, you're unfairly prosecuted, or they took a plea deal and they really shouldn't have. Yeah, because you're just making shit up. You don't actually know that to be the case.
To be completely honest, I'm pretty novice on this. Okay. I'm more trying to target, you're saying he's pro-crime. In my head, I'm just thinking this logically. Let me finish if I can finish 1 second.
By the way, right now, we have centrist winning in the chat. If you're a centrist, okay, I call myself a progressive. Okay, I think a lot of people think progressives are like far left. When I was growing up, you had liberals, progressives, left-wingers. These were distinct things. The media smashed us together, but I'm not a left-winger. I'm a progressive. I consider myself to be center-left. I consider myself to be pretty reasonable. Okay, I don't think I'm too far from the center. So you guys are welcome. Okay, I hope to maybe influence you guys a little bit. You're welcome here. This is a safe space for you. Okay.
If thinking this, there's a possibility that he might have had other reasons. For example, unifying the country. Yep. Next chapter, right?
Like and subscribe, by the way.
Pro-crime, there was other reasons. I'm just saying that's a possibility. And if that's
I'm saying it's a possibility, but I'm saying it's irrelevant because if you're knowingly releasing violent criminals out into the community, pardoning, not just releasing, then
I'm kind of bored with this particular part of the debate now at this point. I feel like they're kind of beating a dead horse, but
being pro criminal, and I've interviewed police officers.
Try to get through it real quickly.
I've interviewed police officers who have been assaulted, beaten, had to retire from the police office, broken bones.
Can I move really quick?
I'll finish very quickly. I've interviewed these police officers. They've been beaten by people who they've then seen walk off the streets and then carry on threatening them. Yes, when Donald Trump is responsible for that, you're definitely pro-crime.
Okay, I doubt a lot of the sources, but
Okay, I will give credit where credit's due. This guy, I probably disagree with a lot of his points. I appreciate that he seemed to have been, will I say he was in good faith? I'm just going to say that he was, okay? He was respectful. He made his points. He allowed the other person to speak. It was a good, back and forth engagement, okay? I want to give credit where credit's due because a lot of these other people, I'm guessing, are probably going to be unhinged. I appreciate that at least we have one hinged person here.
Police officers who testified to being assaulted.
You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
Thanks.
All right. Bella M says, I'm from the Netherlands. I consider myself to be centrist in my own country. If I were an American citizen, I'd probably be ultra left-wing. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of the way things have kind of turned in our country. The Overton window has shifted, and what we consider the way that we talk about our political terminology is really kind of fucked up. It doesn't really make sense from a historical or, geopolitical context. I probably get called by a lot of people like left-wing. I'm not really left-wing. I'm probably closer to the center than I am to the left. But I am liberal. For sure, I am progressive.
Okay, if there's one AI site builder you need to meet, it's this dope tech from Wix.
All right, what's the prompt now?
Hey, how's it going?
The same one.
Nice to meet you, Mehdi.
So you claim that your main claim is that Trump pardoned some people from January 6th. By the way, I was there. I saw it all firsthand. About a football field away.
He was there. What are you doing there?
Bloodied. It was a crazy day.
Were you convicted of any crime?
No, of course not, because I didn't enter the building. Stayed very peaceful. But your entire claim is that he pardoned. Your bet's basically you keep bringing it up. All you do is bring it up.
Okay,
well, let me say this.
Are you okay with his pardoning of Paul Wolchak, who stole money from his employees?
You keep talking about pardoning.
I forget about this. But yeah, he's right. There are all these other people that Donald Trump has pardoned who, not even just the January 6ers. I think it was Mitch McConnell's wife? What was her name? Alina Chow or something like that? Chow? Donald Trump? There was something, I think, in the past about them having been found. I mean, yeah, he lobbed a racist attack against them, but what is her name? Elaine Chow crime. I thought there was something. Inspector General cited numerous instances where Chow's office helped promote her family's shipment business. The Inspector General asked the Trump administration's Justice Department in December 2020 to consider a criminal investigation of Chow, but the DOJ denied that request. So, here's what I mean. These are small little stories that everybody forgets about because we didn't really talk about them, and the right kind of dominated the national narrative and what we focused on. There's so many of these little instances that just kind of fly under the radar and people forget about. Donald Trump had basically Republican. Chow is Mitch McConnell's wife. Talk about nepotism. She's committing crimes in her office, using her office to preference her family's business. And this was under the Trump administration. This was brought up during the Trump administration, and Donald Trump's administration just let him skate by. But you have other stuff like this.
You know who else pardoned?
Recently, you had Mayor Eric Adams. Eric Adams was a Democrat. I think he's basically been disowned by Democrats at this point. But he was found guilty of, what crime was it? Eric Adams. I think he was stealing campaign funds or something. Eric Adams crimes. But the Donald Trump administration made basically a deal with him that they wouldn't pursue. The DOJ had a case that they were building under the Biden administration. Never let them say, by the way, that Democrats let other Democrats commit crimes. The Biden administration not only was investigating his own son, but they were investigating, people like Eric Adams who were Democrats, because right here, Democrats, Eric Adams, he was being charged with bribery, wire fraud. I don't know if he was charged, but they were investigating for it. They were going to bring charges. Wire fraud and illegal campaign contributions. So it sounds like he was siphoning campaign funds to himself personally, and he was accepting bribes for this. The Donald Trump administration comes in, and they basically make a deal with him, say, we're going to have the DOJ that's already been investigating you, and it was going to bring charges against you, already had a solid case ready to go and prosecute you on. We're going to make all of that go away if you agree to work with us. Do you understand what I'm saying there? I'm saying that the Donald Trump administration said we're going to let this criminal commit crimes and get away with those crimes as long as basically bribery towards us. He's going to do the things that we ask him to do. He's going to play along with the things that we want him to play along with, and then he won't have to face the criminal charges that he should have been faced with.
Hunter Biden was pardoned by his father. He did crack cocaine, and he had hookers there too.
I'm with you all. I'm with you all.
But then why don't you claim that Biden? Why don't you claim that
I think Joe Biden in that instance was pro-crime. He shouldn't have done it.
Well,
he
so
shouldn't have done it.
Overall pro-crime just because he did that.
No, but Joe Biden didn't just. So if it was just a pardon, then you'd be fine. But I already mentioned there's also the fact that Joe Biden wasn't actually convicted criminal in office. Trump has committed crimes. Trump hangs around with criminals. He spent much of the 80s hanging around with the New York mob. He hung around with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Well, that's.
I can keep going.
Jeffrey Epstein lived in West Palm Beach, the area, and that's the closest golf course you can go to.
Do you think?
And he's very,
do you think
rich,
Donald Trump is in the Epstein files? Do you think Donald Trump?
I like how this guy's trying to make it sound like, oh, it's the only golf course that he'd gone to, that, you know, Jeffrey Epstein was there and everything. Their relationship extends well beyond that. They were like in each other's contact books. We see that we have like letters like back and forth to them. We see that they party together. They have pictures together. Donald Trump says that he's a good friend, that they party together, they like to have fun. It's not just, oh, this is just a guy that I knew from the golf club because it's the only golf club that I went to, and this other guy went to the golf club.
Found out.
Do you think Donald Trump is in the Epstein file?
No, I do not.
What is Elon Musk lying?
Let me explain this. Okay. He lived in the area in Mar-a-Lago, near Mar-a-Lago, so he bought obviously take bands from
Cope. All right. Anyways, let's move on to the next point. I don't want to hear this bullshit.
Surrounded is now a podcast, available wherever you listen.
Jubilee should get me on there. I would love to debate these people. I would fucking destroy them. I would rip them a new asshole.
Search Surrounded, plug in.
But I'm a nobody online, so they're not going to do it. Man, let's get us there. Get us there at one point. I'll go on there and I'll fucking destroy these people.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Mehdi, lovely to meet you.
So I would say that.
Jeez, man, this guy came in hot. This guy just took a bump from the restroom. He just took a line.
Being anti-constitution, I don't really care, to be quite frankly, because in regards to.
Look how animated this dude is. Well, you know what? I'm on 1.25, so let's put on normal speed. Maybe he's not as jittery as he looks.
The Constitution is a document that should seek to serve us. Yeah. And when it fails to seek to serve us, that can be a...
I know, he kind of is. By the way, listen to what he's saying here, and I've said this before in the past. There's a famous quote where it's something like, if conservatives start losing elections, they won't abandon conservatism, they'll abandon democracy. He's laying out the premise that, hey, the Constitution is meant to serve us. You know what? The Constitution isn't really working for us now, so we're not going to listen to it. We don't really care about the Constitution. How convenient, by the way, because they have made their ideological position, their stake in the ground, the U.S. Constitution. We are the American patriots. We are constitutionalists. We are originalists, right? And now look at, they are so quick to abandon the Constitution because it's in the way now.
Laws can be changed. And quite frankly, the fact is...
And by the way, look, laws can be changed, the Constitution can be amended. Okay, if you want to do that, then change the law through legislation, amend the Constitution. But that's different from, we just don't like the rules, we just don't like the laws, we just don't like the Constitution, so we're going to ignore it. If you want to amend it, go ahead and try to amend it. The issue is they know that they can't amend it because it would require them to get enough support from liberals and centrists in order to amend the Constitution. They know they don't have that much. They know they don't have much that amount of support to make the kind of changes they want to make legally.
We're defending things in this country that shouldn't be defended. The First Amendment should not defend pornography and making children and.
Look at that, the party of free speech. Now they don't like free speech either because pornography's bad.
Women be victimized. Making women and children be victimized as a result of that. I think things like blasphemy shouldn't be allowed per the First.
Blasphemy. So he's saying that we shouldn't have religious freedom in the United States. Congress shall make no laws towards the establishment of a religion, and that we shouldn't have free speech. You shouldn't be allowed to criticize their religion. That should be illegal. That's what he's saying. That's what blasphemy is.
First Amendment. I think that, quite frankly, there are a lot of legal processes that are enabling.
And they're clapping. Don't let him say, by the way, that, oh, it's just like one-off random people. The whole room is clapping. They all agree with them. They don't support free speech. They support it when it's convenient for them.
To fully enact their will in this country in the name of the Constitution or following the Constitution. So, quite frankly, if Trump is anti-Constitution, good, and I think he should go further.
So this is.
Look at him. He's giddy. He's excited. Oh shit, my bad.
By the way, isn't that what America stands for? Persecution of the Jews.
Frankly, that if we are able to enact local leaders, I can put one who is absolutely.
So you don't revealing.
Fully enact their will in this country in the name of the Constitution.
This is wonderfully revealing of the modern conservative mindset. So I appreciate you spelling it out so openly. Just checking, do you support the Second Amendment?
I do.
Okay, surprise, I was shocked.
So think about that. They support the Second Amendment, but they don't support the rest of the Constitution. They don't care. Why do they support the Second Amendment? Because it gives them the violent tools with which to enact the kind of rule that they want to enact. The part of the Constitution he does support is the one that allows them to use violence to enact their political aims. Isn't that interesting?
I'm saying that Donald Trump is defying the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment. He's thinking of defying the 12th and 22nd Amendments. You're saying you don't care about the Constitution, but actually you do because you quite like the Second Amendment. You just don't like the bits that you disagree with. Can I just be clear on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm more than willing to amend it and include
whenever
the
it's in your
Second
favor.
Amendment. Yeah, absolutely.
So can Democrats do the same when they're in office?
No, absolutely not. Because
so you don't believe in
enemy.
democracy?
No.
People like this, by the way, this is like a very abusive, controlling personality. He puts on a smile and everything, but behind the smile is a desire to use violence, to use oppression, to control the other half of the population, not give them representation. And there's like no sense of shame or self-awareness. There's just a big old smile. Like, yeah, absolutely. We're going to totally, take away your rights and we're going to make it so that you guys can't speak out against us. Isn't that awesome?
I don't. Absolutely not.
What do you believe in?
Autocracy.
By who?
At least he's honest, right? He believes in autocracy, meaning authoritarianism, and meaning dictatorship, meaning one person has all the power, not a republic, not separation of powers, not checks and balances, not the legislative and judicial branch. One person in control, one party in control.
Honestly, quite frankly, anyone who is in line with Catholic teaching.
Donald Trump is not...
They want a religious theocracy. I've said this in the past. Other people tell me, like, oh, you're going too far. They don't really believe... Yes, they do.
Catholic.
Of course, he's not. I completely agree, and that's part of the problem.
You don't support Trump?
No, I don't. I didn't even vote for him. I wrote in like John Pork or someone. I can't even remember.
Why did you vote if you don't believe in democracy and you want autocracy?
Well, because quite frankly, I voted. I kind of voted just to.
I came with this argument, but I'm bored of my own argument. I'm much more interested in this. So
yeah, absolutely.
How do we get to an autocracy?
I think, quite frankly, that if we are able to enact local leaders.
Who is the we, by the way?
I think, quite frankly, these far right conservatives sitting right around.
White people?
Yeah.
No
absolutely.
So,
well, actually, I have quite.
Some of the people in this room don't make the cut from what I can see visually.
Actually, hold on for a moment. I do think that there are people who happen to not be white who do actually have history in this country and have roots in this country. For instance, from the Mexican-American War, we subsumed a lot of territory of people who have far stakes in this country who happen to be Hispanic or what have you. I'm for defending the traditional.
The good ones, okay? If you're the good ones, you're allowed to be here. You just got to let us do whatever the fuck we want. And as long as you just sit in the corner and you go along with it, okay, we'll keep you around, all right? Well, we'll have a little chair that you can sit and you can watch.
Demographics of this country, which is majority white, and should stay that way.
How does the United States... I mean, we've gone so off topic, but how does the United States look like under... Sorry, what's your name?
My name is, my name's Connor. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Took a little bit of a doubt there.
Oh, well, I use a pseudonym online,
fair enough,
but fair enough.
How would Connor's America look? What would it look like?
Well, quite frankly, I think we would deport people who shouldn't be here.
I didn't ask about deporting. What does the government look like?
What does the government look like?
Yeah.
I would say, quite frankly, it's under a sort of benevolent leader, such as
Where does he
Franco.
come from?
It could be a kind of a...
Franco. Okay. For those of you that don't know your history, who is Franco? Franco was a fascistic leader. I don't even think this guy would deny that he's a fascist. So Francoist Spain, also known as Francoist dictatorship or nationalist Spain, was a period of Spanish history between 1936 and 1975 when Francisco Franco ruled Spain after the Spanish Civil War. During this existence, the nature of the regime evolved and changed. His ruling a dictatorship over territory. Blah, 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 blah. So this is a dictator. He's talking about a dictatorship.
Aristocratic class could be someone who...
I said this the other day in a thread online, arguing with people, and people argued it against me. I said that what Republicans want is they basically want like a theocratic nationalist dictatorship with an aristocracy behind the dictator. So basically you have like a monarch, because these people kind of view the leader kind of like a almost like a divine right of kings. Like this is almost like our religious proxy in the real world for the enactment of our religious kind of like a metaphysical world, whatever. So they want this monarch. It's like going back in the day to like the medieval times, right? Oh, the medieval times are so base, so cool. We had knights and we had kings and we had monarchs and we had everybody living under the same religion. So they want a dictatorial monarch, and then behind the monarch is basically like a council of like elite, prominent leaders in the society who are basically also going to be kind of like tied in with the religion. This is similar to kind of like what you have in Iran, right? Where you have like the Ayatollah, I think is what it is, or whatever his name is. I don't really care. But you have like the kind of like the autocratic leader, but then behind him is like this religious theocratic council. That's what they want.
Autocrat. Frankly, the people. I mean, we could hold a vote on it. Kings were
Isn't that democracy?
Well, sure. You can have a vote to get to that stage.
And then no more votes afterwards.
Absolutely.
Wow.
100%.
Wow.
Big old smile on his face. We're going to abuse you. Isn't that going to be fun? We're going to oppress you. You're not going to have a vote. You're not going to have representation. There's something so creepy, sociopathic about that kind of like personality.
Well, I'm not going to be a part of the group that he kills because that's the whole thing.
And look at how honest this guy is. He doesn't care if they kill other groups. He's not a part of the group that's going to be killed. Say hi. Say hi to the camera. Say hi to the chat. What are you doing? Who did you vote for in 2020? If you give me the wrong answer, you're not going to be able to live here anymore. All right. Ah! Come on. That's my cat.
How do you know? Autocrats tend to kill everyone,
Carl
even their own
Schmitt makes
supporters.
this point very well in his work. It's the friend-enemy distinction, right?
Carl
liberals,
Schmitt, the Nazi theoretician.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't care.
I mean, there's nothing for me to even say anymore. But look at how brazen, how bold, how honest they are. None of these other conservatives in the room seem to have much of an issue with having actual supporters of dictatorship, theocracy, fascism, and Nazism among the ranks. They consider them part of the group. They hide how extreme they are, but they absolutely are extreme people who want dictatorship. They do.
Are you a fan of the Nazis?
I frankly don't care being called a Nazi at all.
I didn't say that. I didn't actually say that. I said, are you a fan of the Nazis?
Well, they persecuted the church a little bit. I'm not a fan of that. But
what about the persecution of the Jews?
Well, I mean, I certainly don't support anyone's human dignity being assaulted. I'm a Catholic.
But you don't condemn Nazi persecution of the Jews?
I think that...
These people, by the way, she's looking around like she knows this is actually too extreme for even her. I don't know who this is. I mean, that's my impression. Maybe she'll come up and she'll expose herself to also be a crazy person. People like this, religion is kind of like an aesthetic. Religion is like a group identity. They don't actually have like humanitarian impulses. And that's part of the reason why they need religion. Religion kind of grounds them. They don't have like a natural sense of empathy and morality for the common man. So they need like this rules given to them by their fraternity, by their group, to govern what is right or wrong, what they should live by, because they don't feel the same kind of empathy and compassion and humanitarianism that your average person does. But you see how easy it is for them to kind of betray their own Christian ideals, because this guy's talking about being okay with like killing other groups in society, oppressing other groups in society. These are not Christian ideals. Christianity does not teach you, okay? I'm not even Christian, but I was raised Christian. Christianity does not teach you to force your religion on other people. That is something that human beings, like their impulse to usurp the authority of God, establish themselves as the person who gets to dictate for the rest of the population. The commandments tell you, thou shalt not judge. God is the one who's supposed to judge people. It tells you not to cast the first stone. It basically tells you, go out, spread the good word of our religion. Sure, try to save people, try to help people. But the themes of Christianity are not force your religion on other people, oppress people until they abide by your religion. That is not Christianity. That is their own desire for control, their own need to be control freaks over society, and then they use Christianity to package it. Christianity is the hot dog. Their control freak, authoritarian, sociopathic tendencies are the pill within the hot dog. If you don't know the analogy, it's basically when you're trying to feed a dog like medication, you put the pill in the hot dog, so the dog doesn't realize it's eating the medicine. It's eating the hot dog, so you're hiding the pill in the hot dog. He's hiding his sociopathic, control freak, authoritarian behavior within the veneer of conservatism and Christianity.
There was a little bit of persecution.
You may have to rename the show because you're a little bit more than a far-right Republican.
Hey, what can I say?
I think you could say, I'm a fascist.
Yeah, I am.
What a weird, gross fucking reality. Look at this guy.
What can I say?
I think you say I'm a fascist.
He's so happy. He's so proud of himself. This is the kind of person who would torture someone and be in, like, getting so much jolly and so much joy out of it. Look at him. That's a sadistic laugh. That's a laugh of, I know I'm making you uncomfortable. I know that what I'm saying is bad for you, but I'm going to laugh in your face while I advocate for it and while my people have, because they feel like they're gaining enough control. I think, I mean, not mark my words, but hopefully I'm not wrong about this, but I don't think they have as much control as they think they have. Right now they have a lot of control. They have all three branches of government. They have basically until the midterms in order to completely take over the U.S. society, and even then, I don't know if they'd be able to accomplish that. We're already halfway through the first year. We basically have a year and a half for them to try to fundamentally restructure the government in society such that they have dictatorial control and so that the population is going to go along with it. I think they have more control than they do, and so they're willing to be more brazen about what they believe in. But this is the kind of thing that's going to turn like centrists away and stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm just checking who's clapping, just to get my set of where everyone is on this. Because you know that millions of people are going to be watching you on YouTube and checking out who the fascists and the Nazis are.
I'm not ashamed of that whatsoever.
No, clearly you're not.
During the pre-war period, prior to World War II, it was only those parties that properly enacted the people's will. That's why they won. The conservatives were fat cats. They were aristocrats.
Are you in favor of killing people who aren't like you?
Quite frankly, I'm not.
You mentioned Franco earlier.
Not if, right? That qualifier. How is that Christian? So he is saying basically there are instances where he's okay with killing people in mass is the context, but he's a Christian. Okay.
Innocent people.
Oh, well, he killed communists. He killed people who raped nuns and killed priests.
What about children who he killed and women who he killed?
What are you talking about? He never killed any women or children. He was Catholic.
He only killed combatants. Is that what you're claiming?
Yeah, he only killed combatants.
Never killed any.
Members of the Catholic clergy who were deemed either liberal loyal to the Spanish Republic. But I want to know, though, does Franco, I wouldn't be surprised if the guy's lying, did Franco kill children? Lost children of Francoism. The kidnapped were sometimes also victims of child trafficking and forced adoption. Stolen. So you had child trafficking. I don't know if we had children being killed, but either way, I mean, it doesn't really make things better.
Terror was only punishing those people who did acts of terrorism. And again, are you supporting like raping innocent women? Nuns, dude. Killing priests? I mean, priests don't brandish guns and kill people.
You just refuse to condemn the Nazi Holocaust, my friend. I don't think you're in a position to ask anyone any questions.
I quite frankly don't care what you think about me. If I'm a Nazi and being a Nazi,
is mutual,
so being a Nazi means upholding human dignity, because I even believe in your dignity. I don't, in a state that I was running.
He does not. That's a lie. He doesn't give a shit about these other people's dignity. He wants to oppress them. He wants to put them under his thumb, and he doesn't really care if you gotta break some eggs in order to make an omelet, right?
I wouldn't want to hurt you or anything like that, but quite frankly...
Well, I don't want to hurt you, but man, you're making it really hard. I don't want to hurt you, so you should just kind of let us do what we need to do. Hey, you know what? Don't interfere. I really wouldn't want to hurt you, okay? I really don't want you to get hurt, so you should just kind of step out of the way, buddy, okay?
Okay. So do you concede then? I mean, why...
Do I concede you're a fascist who won't condemn the Nazis?
Yeah.
Yes, I concede that.
Okay, great. So...
What is the topic again? Let's get back to the topic. Upper left hand. Donald Trump is defying the Constitution. Where are we at this point? This guy's justifying autocracy, justifying fascism, saying that he doesn't really support... This guy's got a big old grin on, and they all think it's so funny and cute and it's awesome what they're doing. Basically, they are saying that we don't actually really care about the rule of law or the Constitution. We're okay with autocracy, or we're okay with dictatorship. They're not even arguing against the point. They're just arguing for why it's okay, for why they think it's a good thing.
I mean, what are we doing here? Because, I mean, you just seem offended. You just seem offended, to be quite frankly. Like,
I'm offended by...
That word has gotten way too much mileage over the years. Oh, you're just offended that people are being persecuted for their beliefs. You're just offended that people are getting genocided. You're just offended that we're advocating for a dictatorship. Hey, hot take. Some things are worth being offended by. You know, if you have children that are being molested, you should be offended by that. There are things that deserve the reaction of being offense. There are things that should offend your consciousness. The idea that there's nothing that we're supposed to be outraged about or offended about is a tool that they weaponize to basically tell you that none of the concerns that you have are valid. None of them should matter.
People who can't condemn the Nazis. Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, I condemn the evils that they did, but I don't really care about being. Yeah, sure. I don't care about being called a Nazi. Is the whole thing.
I never called you a Nazi. You called yourself a Nazi, a fascist, and a General Franco supporter.
Well, yeah, I am a General Franco supporter. He was awesome. He was so super cool, quite frankly. Because the whole thing.
And the guy shakes it. Look at these other people like, oh yeah, cool, no problem.
Because it is the means to support an end. The reason we have free speech now is because we want to be openly talking about our opinions so we can get the state that we want. But it doesn't.
I've said this in the past. All the years that you're talking about being free speech warriors, they only cared about free speech insofar it was protecting their ability to push forth their agenda. They don't actually care about free speech in itself. Once they have the ability to enact the kind of totalitarian system that they want, they'll get rid of free speech because they don't actually care about the free speech. They only see it as a tool right now to getting to the point where they can get rid of it later on, and they're getting rid of the speech of the other group of people.
Doesn't mean upholding free speech after we win. Again, I mentioned
the only good thing about this fascist moment we're in is that you guys are so open about it.
The whole reason I mentioned Carl Schmitt earlier, and you kind of blew past him, is the friend-enemy distinction. Even liberals, when they take power, they want to enact policies and they want to enact protections for their people and their ideas, and they're willing to punish their enemy. And so I'm the same way. I'm like, hey, if you're
they're willing to punish their enemy for what? Not just for existing, not just for having a different religion, not just for having a different, political ideology, but for committing crimes. There's a difference there. Things like theft, stealing, trying to circumvent an election. Those are crimes because those are things that we're saying nobody should be allowed to do. Not my side should be allowed to do it, your side's not. These are things that we're saying nobody should be able to do these things because they're not fair to the other people in society.
You're going to punish me, I'm going to get in power, and I'm going to frankly punish you when you try to leverage power against me.
By contrast, what he's saying isn't, oh, we have a standard that applies to everyone. What his standard is, the laws apply. There's a famous saying, the other group is bound by the law but not protected by it. Our group is protected by the law but not bound by it. He wants a system where the laws apply to keeping those that he disagrees with, who don't share the same religion, who maybe are not the same ethnicity, underneath, living in like a second class, second tier, not having the same rights and privileges, not having the same status in society. That's the difference.
It's that simple.
I'm not sure what you want to say.
Hey, it is what it is.
All right. Pause. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seats.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
I don't just throw this word out around anything. This guy actually is a sociopath. Every time he smiles, it's a sadistic smile. It's a smile of, I know what I'm saying to you is oppressive and abusive. That's when I'm smiling. I think that's funny. I think that's cute. I'm excited about your fear, about what it might do to you.
I can't say the same, but thank you.
And then immediately right after, he'll go back to just kind of having like a straight face. And it says a lot that all these other conservative influencers are so like giddy and funny and they think it's cute. What does it say about you? 20 of you. And these are the people that are on your side. These are the people that feel comfortable to be in the same company as you. I feel like a lot of times with these people, there's no sense of irony or shame that you guys are enabling like dictatorship. Even because I say that because I don't think necessarily all of these people are that extreme, but there's a reason why people that are this extreme are so comfortable being there, and there's a lack of ability for these people to actually kind of push back against the extremists within their own ranks.
Good to meet you, Mehdi. Good to meet you, sir. All right, so I kind of want to start at the basics or the foundation. I want to see.
Can I just check?
Yes.
Are you a fascist?
No.
Okay.
I don't. I describe myself as, I think, just a Christian.
Fair enough.
I'm a devout Christian.
Good to hear.
So, I want to start like, what is your connection
Good job.
to the Constitution, and
Congratulations.
why do you love it so much? Like, what makes it so important that Trump would defy something like the Constitution?
I feel like he's setting up the premise, kind of like the other guy. Is this guy wearing eyeliner? Like the other guy was doing, which is, actually, the Constitution, maybe it's not such a great thing after all. Because really, the Constitution is just a means to an end, and it's kind of in our way. We're not able to reach the ends that we want to reach. Therefore, does the Constitution really matter? feel like that's what he's setting up.
Great questions. My first connection is I'm an American citizen. I naturalized American citizen, took a pledge to this country, to the Constitution. As a previous speaker has said, Constitution's not perfect.
I do want to drive this point home. And by the way, some of you are new in here. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff. I want people to make this point more in the future. A lot of times on the right, they'll claim the title of Westerner, of constitutionalist. They are neither Western nor are they constitutionalists. They don't support Western values. They want dictatorship. They want monarchy. They don't want free speech. They don't want freedom of religion. They don't want separation of powers. These are Western ideals. These people are rejecting those things. When they say Western, all they mean is you come from like a European country or the United States or Canada, or you're white. That's what they mean by Western. They're not actually saying Western principles, values, political legacy. They're talking like ethnicity. And a lot of people don't really, like they don't even pick up on that.
A lot of things I don't like about it. I don't like the Second Amendment. There's various amendments. I don't like the way the Senate is set up. I'm sure there's things you don't like about the Constitution. The difference is, I don't think you can just illegally defy the Constitution. I think each and every one of us can just make up whatever we want. Certainly presidents who are elected with an oath, right? Donald Trump took an oath to preserve, protect, defend the Constitution. And now when he's asked on television, isn't it your job to uphold the Constitution? He said on NBC, I don't know, which goes against his oath. And I'm identifying specific amendments where he is violating. He's only 6 months into his presidency, defying the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment. He wants to defy the 22nd Amendment and be president for a third term. This is the problem we have right now. Free speech is under assault. The free press is under assault. Due process is under assault. The right to be in your home and not be invaded by federal agents, the Fourth Amendment, is under assault. So that, for me, is a problem.
Okay. Well, I'd like to start to say I really don't find the Constitution that important. I find it to
What'd I tell you, right? He was setting up the premise that, actually the Constitution is not that big a deal. We can get rid of it.
Like a 300-year-old document. And it was created to...
Notice, and you should be outraged with how dishonest, cynical, and, manipulative their whole argument has been for decades, that they are the constitutionalists, that they are American patriots because they are supportive of the Constitution. Look at how quickly and how easily it's taken for them to just, whatever, Constitution doesn't matter. All those times they said in the past that it was all about the Constitution, about rule of law and the traditions and stuff, they didn't mean it. They didn't care about it the entire time. They're just using it to manipulate people.
Defy the country that subjugated your ancestors in India, and then your parents probably moved from India to Britain, and then you move here to tell us that we should listen to a piece of paper that you were never even connected to begin with. So,
what do you mean you're not connected to the piece? What makes him think that he's especially connected to the piece of paper that he's not? I mean, this is a guy who's saying that he doesn't even care about the Constitution. This guy is making the argument for the Constitution. What does he think it means to be connected to the Constitution? Does he think that your connection to the Constitution comes from ancestry, from birth, or does it come from an ideological commitment to the Constitution? This is the disconnect here. That I think why it's so easy for them to flip on a dime on the Constitution is because their loyalty to the Constitution came from loyalty to the tribe, loyalty to tradition, loyalty to the group. It was never a true principled loyalty to the ideals of the Constitution. And that's why it's so easy to abandon, because if the rest of your group is willing to abandon it, your loyalty was ultimately to your group more than it was to the principles in the first place. So it's easier for you to abandon the principles than to abandon the group.
I want to say, if I don't care about it, why do you care about it so much?
How do you run a country without any kind of laws or due process? And by the way, you do care about it, because without the First Amendment, you wouldn't be sitting here.
Well, I agree with the First Amendment, and I think.
So do you agree with Donald Trump's crackdown on the First Amendment? He's imprisoning people for their speech. He's threatening free speech media organizations. He's threatening peaceable assembly. These are all rights under the First.
I roll. Yeah, I do care about the First Amendment. For me, I don't care about the First Amendment. For you, that's the reality. Is what's going on here is. They cared about the First Amendment insofar as it allowed them to normalize basically fascism in the United States. Right? If you think that's an exaggeration, just go back and watch the last 10 minutes of this debate.
First Amendment, why aren't you bothered by that as a conservative who claims to love the First Amendment?
So I don't like the First Amendment. I like free speech.
Okay,
so
the First Amendment is what guarantees free speech. I'm from the UK, by the way. I'm from the UK, which is a democracy.
I think why he's saying that is because the First Amendment also guarantees freedom of religion and guarantees freedom of association. And he probably doesn't like freedom of religion. He's probably theocratic. He wants Christianity to be the official, top-down, forced upon you religion of the United States.
We don't have the First Amendment. No, that's one of the things I do like about the Constitution. I wish the UK did have a First Amendment.
So people
I'm a
that get
journalist.
arrested for praying outside abortion clinics and stuff like that, right?
So you're opposed to people being arrested for speech crimes, I assume.
Well, it depends what it is. If it's like the people...
So you're like one of the...
There we go. Depends what it is. If it's in support of me, sure. If it's your free speech, I don't care about it.
As long as it's someone who agrees with you, you don't mind the crackdown.
I support...
Either we consistently support principles or we
free
don't.
speech 100%.
Okay.
I don't think
So
anyone...
do you think Donald Trump is defying the Constitution by cracking down on the First Amendment?
So I think he's cracking down on free speech, like the deportation of Mahmoud Khalil, who was just
released from prison by a judge saying his First Amendment right to violence.
And I agree with the judge, and I disagree with Trump deporting them, but I think that's more a matter of free speech and not the Constitution.
I think that's pedantry at this point.
I mean, hey, I'll give him credit for that at least. He was at least consistent in his support of free speech. Okay? I appreciate at least when people are being honest and consistent with what their beliefs are. I'll give him credit for that.
Which is the First Amendment. So he is defying the Constitution, so it's a pleasure to be in agreement with you, sir.
All right, pause. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
Thank you very much. Okay, how's it, Mehdi?
Mehdi, great to meet you. My name is Kai. Do you, Mehdi, believe that the Constitution is important and good?
Overall, yes.
Do you believe that...
What grosses me out too is like a lot of these conservatives, they'll have like a big shit-eating smile on their face while they say the most crazy, oppressive, dictatorial shit. And I don't know if it's because they get like sadistic joy out of it, or if they just genuinely don't, like there's a disconnect with, you know, how crazy and extreme they're being to other people. It's like when you don't see the impact your behavior has on others and you're ignorant of it, you're in bliss. You're in blissful ignorance of it. I'm not sure what it is. It's either like a sadistic thing or there's just a complete lack of like empathy and understanding about what these things you're saying and doing have as an impact on other people.
The Constitution can be eroded through democratic processes?
It would be so nice to have this level of like ignorant bliss about the world, to not care or not know or not even consider the negative impacts that other people have. Oh, I'm having a great time. Who gives a shit about what happened to other people?
What do you mean by road?
The original intention of the Constitution being destroyed through a purely, democratic or legal process.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Okay.
I think if you're democratically amending the Constitution per the rules of the Constitution, that's fine. If we could find a constitutional way to get rid of the Second Amendment, I'd be pro that.
So let's pose a hypothetical.
For the record, I disagree with Mehdi here. I support the Second Amendment. I also support gun regulation. Crazy idea. No one ever talks about this. If you are genuinely moderate, if you are genuinely a centrist, that is the moderate centrist position. The Second Amendment allows for gun regulation, gun control. In fact, this point was made in the Heller versus DC, or DC versus Heller decision. Scalia talks about a long history of gun regulation in the United States. It goes all the way back to before the founding of the country, during the founding era of the country, meaning that the founding fathers presided over gun regulation. You had gun regulation in the Wild West. The idea that we didn't have any gun regulation is just ahistorical. It's not real history. The Second Amendment, the founders didn't interpret this way. They didn't act like it meant this way. It doesn't mean you're not allowed to have any gun regulation. It means that you have a general right to own firearms. The extent to which that right is afforded to you isn't like, it's not absolute. And that's actually true of everything in the Constitution because you have like overlapping concerns. So, like another way of saying this is your freedom to swing your fist ends at my nose. So in other words, you have the freedom, you have the right to egress, go wherever you want in the world. But that right that's afforded to you in the Constitution ends at someone else's rights, right? When you start implicating my right to be safe and secure in my bodily autonomy. You're not allowed to just swing your fist around and hit me in the face because now you're infringing on my rights. Rights will come into conflict. They will overlap each other. There's overlapping interest and considerations to take. The Second Amendment gives a general right to own firearms, and I think even at the founding of the country it really meant more for the state militias, but that's a separate issue. You can support a general right to firearm ownership while also supporting that, maybe we should have background checks. Maybe there's certain kinds of weapons like a nuclear bomb. Maybe your average person shouldn't be able to own a nuclear bomb, right? And you might be hearing that and think to yourself like, oh, well, when is that really going to happen that someone's going to own a nuclear bomb? Well, give it 100, give it 1,000 years from now, maybe the technology will be miniaturized and portable. Maybe that's a whole other can of worms, right? But basically I'm making the point that almost everyone, 99% of people, even Second Amendment supporters, will say that there is a line. Obviously that line's going to be nuclear bombs, But there's probably a line even before that where you can look at a certain weapon and say your average person probably shouldn't have access to this weapon. I think the Supreme Court's position so far, unless they come back around and change it now with this conservative majority, the Supreme Court's position has thus far been that your right, your personal right to own a firearm per the Second Amendment applies to the kind of standard firearms that you would see kind of like in a like the kind that you would expect would be needed for like self-defense or for hunting, basically, right? There's a lot of wiggle room within that. And when I say that, I'm not saying, oh, I want to get rid of AR-15s. That's not my position. I'm just saying I'm not 100%. There should be no restrictions. I'm not 100%. We should get rid of all firearms. I am actually genuinely a moderate on this. I've owned firearms in the past, actually, and I will continue to own firearms in the future. And I also think if you're a progressive, if you're a liberal, if you're a centrist, you should probably think about owning firearms too. You don't want these people who want to put a dictatorship in power to be the only ones who own the firearms. Think about that.
Of the United States has drastically changed, and the population now has completely different intentions about what to do with the country. Let's say it wants to give it all back to Mexico, dismantling the United States of America. If that's the case, then what's the use of the Constitution? It hasn't defended the country. In fact, it's allowed for its destruction.
Notice all of them are making the case now that Mehdi Hasan is right. That they're not even defending against the idea that Donald Trump's defined the Constitution. They're basically saying, well, Constitution doesn't matter. The ironic thing is he says, you have these people that come in and they don't really have like the original intent of the Constitution. They want to morph the Constitution into something that, isn't kind of the intent. Number one, where is it happening? That's not really happening. Number two, they don't really have the numbers to do it. It's hard to amend the Constitution. Number three, if we're to look at which faction wants to push the Constitution away from how it's intended to structure the government, representative, democratic republic with checks and balances, with three separate branches of government, with no one having a concentration of power, with everybody, with the law applying equally to everybody, right? That version of America, under the Constitution, is that something that his faction wants to uphold, or is that something the other side wants to uphold? Because when he says this, he's making it sound like, oh, the demographics have changed, things have changed in this country, and now the people who, vote and everything, they want to change the Constitution in a way that isn't the original intent. Well, the reality is that it's actually his faction that wants to move away from things like separation of powers, the law applying to everybody equally, not having all power concentrated into a dictator, right? He's talking about himself. So it's funny when they project outward that, oh, we need to do all this radical stuff because we're protecting against this group of people who want to fundamentally change the constitutional system we have. The reality is actually, you guys are the ones that want to do that. The other people are actually the ones defending against it. It's ironic that the immigrants that come over support the Constitution more than these guys do. It's sad.
I don't understand the premise. How did the whole country change? Demographic replacement, mass migration. I mean, we're seeing a change in demographics. And there's what is the... I do want to talk about immigration today. Everyone's itching in this group to get to immigration.
Yes,
I've saved it for you all. But given we're on the sense of the Constitution, and you asked the question, well, what is the proportion of immigrants in this country? What proportion of the population is foreign-born?
It's very difficult to measure because the actual projections of the number have been changing more rapidly.
But what is currently the best estimate?
I think it was about 15%.
Yes,
yeah,
just under 15%.
Which is, by the way, more actually than the original estimate was.
So, but 15% of the people are going to change the country, change the Constitution. How's that going? It's actually a nightmare. As someone who wants to...
And see, that was the point that I was making. I think that was my point number two, is that they don't have the numbers to do that. It's a delusional position to hold. It's delusional to think. I don't know if these guys actually believe it or if it's just like a talking point they throw out there to convince other people. But it is really quite delusional to think, and it's kind of like paranoid, like genuinely like you are paranoid and in fear of something that doesn't even really make sense. You're saying 15% of the population is going to fundamentally destroy and restructure the Constitution in a way that, by the way, you want to do with your demographic group that makes up 30, 40, 50% of the population?
Get rid of things like the ridiculous way the Senate is set up, or the Second Amendment on guns, or various other things. It's really hard to change the Constitution. They made it almost impossible. You know, last time we had a constitutional amendment? 20, 30 years ago.
I understand, which is why
I think members of Congress pay.
Which is why...
No, I get it. So where are you getting this scenario where 350-odd million people all become foreign-born migrants or the children of migrants, immediate migrants, even though America is a nation of migrants, and then abandon the Constitution and give the country back to Mexico? Outside of your imagination, where is that happening?
Let's bring it back to the actual discussion. What you did is you entertain my hypothetical, but then instead of sticking to the point of the Constitution, you said, well, how would you bring about your hypothetical? And then when I
you missed out the part where the Constitution is quite hard to change.
Hold on. I understand that. I gave you...
I also wanted to get a
sense of where you are, and you're a great replacement guy. So that's fine.
Okay, yeah, and you're a real good journalist because you don't talk to people who identify as like a political ideology. I mean, that's
No,
a very liberal
I
idea.
don't debate fascists.
And,
I'll talk to them.
and
I won't
frankly,
debate them.
frankly, that's upsetting. I think there's a big problem when we value freedom of speech so much, but any real journalist is not going to talk to somebody because they identify with a politically incorrect ideology.
Just talk to the guy in front.
Ask yourself, by the way, the people that say stuff like this, are they entertaining communists? Are they entertaining anarchists? Are they entertaining the woke people on their shows? No, they're not. Right? They don't entertain the views of those people. They only want the extremes of their side to be entertained. They don't really actually. It's not like a universal principled position that they hold here.
In front of you. What are you talking about?
You literally stop talking to him, and then everybody has to vote
debating
about.
versus talking is very different.
Okay.
It's pointless.
Okay,
Right? He doesn't believe in free speech.
Okay.
He doesn't believe in
He was
democracy.
freely speaking with you. You're the one
No,
who shut up.
No, he said very clearly.
Okay,
He's like,
we'll
free
tone it
speech,
down, we'll tone it
so that I
down,
can get one election.
I'll tone
After
it
one
down,
election,
we'll
my
tone
guy
it
comes
down,
in,
we'll tone it
and after
down.
my guy comes in, nobody gets to speak or vote again. Why would I debate that?
We listen to your conversation.
Well, I'm
let's
reminding you
bring
what
it
was
back to
said
this
because you just
topic. Let's bring it back to the
misrepresented.
Constitution.
Please do.
I
First, fourth, fifth, 14th Amendments. Those are the ones I'm saying Trump is defying. Do you support that or do you deny them?
I believe that the Constitution is valuable because it represents particular interests of the founding stock of Americans who made this country great.
Founding stock. Whenever they say this, when they're talking about founding stock, there's another way of just saying white people. When they say founding stock, they mean the European colonists who came over. That's what they mean by the founding stock. The stock, like you got like stock of animals, who established the country. So they're talking about the progeny, the descendants of the original colonists who came here. Something really, I don't even, this isn't even like worth, it's so obvious. Like, for them to say stuff like this, they're just saying white people. They want white people, but they always have to find these like weaselly ways to restructure, reword it. Oh, the founding stock of the country. Oh, so you mean just like white people? Right? Just say that then, right? If you want to be a white nationalist, just say it.
Do you think due process is important? Some would say that's at the very core of American Constitution.
And
Fifth Amendment.
And what I think makes the Constitution function, what allows it to save this country and to actually make it work, are the people who are.
I'm not sure where you're going with this argument.
Hold on. I'll show you.
Trump defying the Constitution. That's my claim. You can have these.
All right, I'm looking at my poll here. We got some libertarians in here, apparently. One libertarian. We got 3 votes, so 1 libertarian. Welcome, okay? I am what you would consider to be like a centrist libertarian or a center-left libertarian. I'm going to be honest with you, I've had a bad opinion of libertarians over the past couple of years because they've cozied up to these guys who are like far-right, fascistic, anti-constitutionalist types. I'm not saying that's you in chat, okay? So you have an opportunity to redeem the rest of the crazy libertarians out there. But I hope at the very least, like some of these libertarians on the right, because I understand if you're a right libertarian, your economics are right-wing, but you're not for authoritarianism, you're not for fascism and all that. I hope that you guys can see like this group that you guys have kind of hitched your wagons to. Maybe not you specifically, but a lot of libertarians in the United States have hitched their wagons to. These people are not for the Constitution. They're not for freedom of speech. They're not for freedom in general. They might, I don't even think at this point they share your economic principles.
We're taking it into a different manner, which is what's the function of the Constitution?
I'd rather not have your.
You already did.
Yeah, but now I
just
don't
5
want
minutes
to.
ago when you took it to immigration.
Now I don't want to.
Okay.
I think this guy thinks the function of the Constitution is to like protect the founding stock of the country, but the founding fathers themselves talked about it. The purpose of the Constitution was protect the concept of like inalienable human rights, essentially. It was like a humanistic, like foundational document. It was revolutionary in that sense that with the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, as kind of like a compromise with the people of the country to enter in a social contract with the Constitution, right, was this acknowledgement this is a government that is going to be from its very foundation, from its very offset, a type of government of, for, and by the people in which individual rights that are supposed to be inalienable are guaranteed. I don't think he views the Constitution that way. I think he views the Constitution as like some sort of like thing for his group of people, his foundational stock or whatever.
Bring it back. I want to bring it back to the first, the fourth, the fifth, and the 14th Amendment and the 22nd Amendment. Either you say, you got 2 very good positions here. One is to say, I don't think he's defying them, and I'll say why you're wrong. Or you say, I don't care that he's defying them, as one of your colleagues said, in which case, I don't know where this conversation goes because you don't believe in democracy.
That's fair. Do you think it's wrong to dismantle the Constitution?
So there's two options ahead of you.
No,
Do you
hold on.
agree?
This is important.
Do you
What I'm
agree?
doing
So
is
is Donald Trump? Okay, let me ask a question back. You're asking me questions. You're not answering the basic point.
Well,
Do you think Donald Trump is dismantling the Constitution? Can we agree that Donald Trump is dismantling? Because I'll agree with you on that. I think he is dismantling the Constitution.
I think he's
illegally, unconstitutionally.
I think he's interpreting it in ways that are more.
Which judges do not agree with him on.
Okay, hold
which
on.
the Supreme Court has not agreed with him on.
And the judges don't agree with the people who wrote the Constitution.
How do you know that?
Okay, let's take your example of the Second Amendment. Let's say that a bunch of
I didn't
judges.
give the Second Amendment.
No,
I said
hold on.
first, fourth. You don't want to talk about the ones I've given.
You're interrupting me. You're interrupting me.
First.
I think this guy's under the delusion that the founding fathers, when they talked about the Second Amendment, were talking about a personal right to gun ownership. They weren't. They were talking about it in the context of state militias, because they didn't have a standing army at that time, and I don't think they intended to have a standing army. And part of like their negotiations for the crafting of the Constitution to get some of the states involved was like a guarantee that, hey, you individual states, you will have the ability to kind of raise your own militias and to defend yourselves, and we're not going to take that away from you, right? That was the context of the Second Amendment. Not that I'm against a personal right to the Second Amendment, but the context of the founding fathers, they didn't talk about the Second Amendment the way modern people talk about the Second Amendment.
14th, 22nd Amendments. Those are my amendments that I came with today. If you don't want to debate them, just say so.
I'm trying to understand your ideology. You believe that dismantling the Constitution is okay when it's about parts of the Constitution that you disagree with. You would be fine getting rid of the Second Amendment, even though that would be a dismantling of the Constitution.
No, because it would be done via constitutional means. I'm not the one sitting here like your pal.
Okay, you have agreed. You have agreed the Constitution.
I'm not the one saying you just get rid of them willy-nilly. I don't agree. I don't agree that Joe Biden should come in and say by executive order. If Joe Biden put out executive order saying Second Amendment.
Can we agree? I mean, it grosses me out. These people are like so gleeful. It's so fun. It's such a cute little game that there is something very sadistic about this kind of behavior.
It applies. I can round up everyone's guns. I don't agree with that.
Your result is exactly the same.
I don't agree with them. No, but I don't agree with the method of doing it. It's unconstitutional.
That's fine.
We're talking about violating the law, violating the Constitution, violating the social contract. And for him, it's just, isn't that cool? Isn't it funny? Isn't it a big, funny, jokey game? We're going to do that to you guys. There's nothing you can do about it. Isn't that so cute? So funny.
Define the Constitution, and I would have said so, but you can't bring yourself to say so. We've been sitting here for several minutes. All of your friends have seen me ask you several times. Do you agree that Donald Trump has defined the 1st, 4th, 5th, 14th, and possibly 22nd Amendments? Your colleague at least admitted that he's defined the First Amendment.
I understand that you came in here. What you are attempting to do is simply frame this conversation like.
Notice, by the way, that he's not really answering the question.
First claim about Donald Trump, but then when anybody asks you any kind of question that presses you to the least degree.
So, like, they won't even admit that they are trying to circumvent the Constitution, but they want to steer the conversation in the direction, anyways, of, well, actually, we should talk about maybe the Constitution isn't all that great. Maybe we should get rid of it. Okay, are you guys trying to get rid of the Constitution? Well, come on, let's get back to the thing that I want to talk about. Well, no. I want to answer that question. Like, can we agree that you guys are actually trying to get rid of the Constitution? That's actively what you're doing right now. Well, the Constitution, I mean, it's not really like the end all be all. Okay, I'm trying to ask you for a straight question. Is that what you guys are currently actively trying to do right now? Well, the Constitution, it's like he's not answering straightforwardly. So it's weird because they won't even fess up to what they're doing, but simultaneously they're trying to justify it anyways.
I answered. I said I would dismantle the Constitution, but I would do it constitutionally, not by executive order.
So what I'm trying to get to is to prove to everybody who's watching that what you care about is not the Constitution and what it represents or creates.
But that's part of the Constitution. The Constitution was designed at its very outset to be amendable. It has an amendment process built into it in the first iteration of the Constitution. It is absolutely constitutional to change the Constitution, to amend the Constitution. That's what that means. That is constitutional. That is part of the Constitution. It was designed that way for a reason. I could disagree with the kind of amendments that you want to make. Like, I disagree with Mehdi Hasan wanting to get rid of the Second Amendment, right? But Mehdi Hasan, at the very least, is he respects that the Constitution is the social contract, and that if you do want to make changes, then you have to convince enough of the population to vote for politicians in the House and the Senate to ratify those constitutions, to ratify that amendment. Then you have to get a significant amount of the state legislatures, I think, to also vote to ratify that amendment. That is a whole massive process, and it takes a lot of people in agreement to make that happen. That's not just you and your faction deciding for the rest of the population without the legal authority to, without the support to do so, to just ignore it or change it as you want to without having to go through that process. The process to amend the Constitution is the Constitution. That is constitutional.
You care about the Constitution only insofar as it allows you to achieve your political worldview. We agree on that.
No, I care about the Constitution
You agree with the
because I don't think
No.
presidents should be fascist dictators and violate the Constitution. That's what I'm saying.
You care.
And he is different. I don't think the president should have the power to lock you and me up if we write an op-ed that he doesn't like.
That's
I
awesome.
don't
I agree.
think the
I agree.
president should be able to crack down on us if you and I decide to go protest
I agree with you.
outside his parade.
I agree with
don't think the president should be able to deprive you and I of due process or come into
I
our
agree with
homes
you.
without a warrant.
And I
well,
think-
let's end on an agreement then.
All right, pause. You've been voted out.
I'm glad
It's
we
good
ended
to
on
meet
an
you.
agreement.
It's good to meet
meet
you.
you, Kai.
Oh my god. Okay, this is pink-haired lady. I'm gonna eat my words, but she looks relatively normal. Please, please just let her be a normal person here.
Nice to meet you.
How are you? So Trump is defying the first.
I know that sounds wild too, because like conservatives had this whole thing against like pink-haired college ladies or whatever, and so she has pink hair, so to them she shouldn't be normal, but she actually seems like she's probably the most normal here. I'm saying that totally off of appearance. She's gonna open her mouth and say crazy shit now.
And maybe the 22nd soon.
Watch.
So I want to focus on the first and the fifth.
Okay.
So you say that
Okay,
Trump is-
seems like she's actually willing to have a straightforward conversation.
For example, he banned the Associated Press from attending White House events. A Trump-appointed judge said that was against the First Amendment. He's been cracking down on media organizations he doesn't like over their speech. If they say stuff he doesn't like, for example,
Cracking down how?
So, for example, he banned the Associated Press from attending White House events because they
can't go
said
to the White House
it's the
either.
Gulf of Mexico. That's not how it works. They were already at the White House. He deprived them of access, so he punished them for their speech.
But
which is
are
why
they
a
allowed
judge,
to go to the press,
which is why a judge refuted.
Okay, I see what she's gonna do here. She's gonna wiggle out on these technicalities. I think that a lot of these things are technically not violations of the First Amendment because of the way that they were enacted. But so if we look at, for example, the CBS thing. So Donald Trump launched a lawsuit against, I think it was CBS or NBC, over their interview with Kamala Harris because they edited the interview. By the way, editing an interview is your First Amendment right. It's just, I shouldn't even have to say this. There's no case there, right? But they settled with him. Why'd they settle with him? Because they were trying to do a merger with Paramount, and that merger has to be approved by I think it's the FCC. So Donald Trump was basically wiggling this lawsuit over their head. You know, you're going to have to come to the table if you want this merger to go through. These are things, not things that they said on the surface, but this is the context behind all this. NBC or CBS, whatever the fuck, whichever one it was, I don't really know, I don't really care. They wound up settling with him, and what you saw afterwards is they ended their, or they announced they're going to end their show with Stephen Colbert, who's very critical of Donald Trump. I think they paid the Trump organization a lot of money, right? And they're ostensibly going to be able to go through with this merger. That is kind of like a quid pro quo, like a pay for play. The administration is using lawfare in order to compel speech and to crack down on speech. And they're doing it in such a way that technically they're getting around, but they're finding loopholes. And the whole point of when you say that you're finding a loophole is you are being violated. If you are violating things, but you're doing it in a way where you're finding areas where things aren't clearly defined. You know that you're going against the intent of the law, but you're doing it in a way that you can kind of wiggle out from. So I would argue, and I think it's fair to argue, and I think if you're being intellectually honest, they are trying to crack down on free speech against the administration, but they're trying to do so in a way that has the thinnest veneer of legality behind it.
Trevor McFadden said this was contrary to the First Amendment. A Trump-appointed judge. He's called MSNBC and CNN illegal. Media organizations are not ipso facto
But that's free speech.
illegal.
He can call them whatever they want.
Attacking the media?
Yeah, he
by
can
the
attack
president as the executive?
Yeah, he can
And
say whatever he wants. That's literally the First Amendment.
He can say whatever he wants.
Absolutely.
But the media can't say what they want.
They do.
But he's going after them. He's suing them. He's using lawsuits to crack down on the press.
They
Presidents
use
have not done that
lawsuits
before.
to give him 34 felonies that Hillary.
I do think it's an issue when you have like an individual who is suing, but they're also in control of the agency that oversees the entity that they're suing. That's a fundamental conflict of interest. This should be obvious to anyone. We've gotten to a point where we pretend that we're all stupid and dumb now. But when you have a conflict of interest and you are suing an agency that is under the purview or you're suing an organization that's under purview of an agency that you control, that's not just a normal lawsuit between two private individuals in the society. And when you look at the merits of the lawsuit, what are they suing them for? They're suing them because CBS released an interview that was edited, they're allowed to do that. You're not going to find me a law. You're not going to find me a legal theory. You're not going to find me a court precedent that's going to say they're not allowed to do that. So the lawsuit itself is clearly bogus. It doesn't even fail like the sniff test of being meritorious. So then why are you doing it? You're doing it to put a pressure campaign on an organization which you have an agency who holds their fate in their hands with.
Hillary Clinton did.
No media gave him a lawsuit.
No, but people on the Democratic side.
We don't talk about the Democrats.
Okay. So he can call them whatever he wants because that's the freedom of speech.
He's threatened to imprison.
And that is true. You are allowed to use your freedom of speech to criticize, but I think there is an issue when you are president of the United States and you are this is kind of qualitative, but there's like a thin line between where you are exercising your free speech, but once you are in the position of government, you're representing the government now. You're not representing yourself. You're not representing your political party by itself. You are now supposed to represent the United States government. You are now supposed to represent the United States people as a whole. So now that you're taking preferential treatment and hostility against particular media organizations based on their ideology, you as the representative government are basically saying that the government is taking preference to this ideology or that ideology, or it's taking hostility towards this ideology or that ideology, and that is against the spirit of the First Amendment of the Constitution.
He wants to. He said reporters should go to prison for reporting. He threatened some of them with.
And that is also true. Yeah.
Rape, right. That is against the First Amendment.
Okay. How is that against the First Amendment?
You don't think sending reporters to prison for reporting that he does
Did he do that?
He wanted to. He said so.
Okay,
I would like them to do that.
I would really like to.
So other people stopped him doesn't mean he's not defending the Constitution.
So this is someone who, so far I'm not saying that she's like intentionally lying, and I don't know if I'd say that. She is very bought into her political position, her political tribe, and so she's willing to kind of like kind of warp and be like intellectually dishonest and pretend that she's dumb and kind of rationalize away things is kind of what's going on here.
He can want to do something.
Yes.
That doesn't mean he will.
I do wonder, and I mean she's kind of a public figure. I wonder if you were to look through like her Twitter or something, would you find that she was complaining about the Democrats and the DNC and the deep state cracking down on media organizations back in 2015, back in 2019, back in 2021, 2022, right? Because all of those things that conservatives had cited back in those days, those weren't actually infractions of the First Amendment. That was private entities, private media organizations deciding for themselves how they want to conduct their moderation on their platforms. But if and I'm not saying I don't know, I haven't seen her, and I'm not super familiar with her, if she was to attack Democrats for that or liberals or the deep state or media organizations at that time period, and then over here she's defending Trump for that would be a contradiction in the standards that she applies there. Again, I'm not familiar with her, so I don't know. I have a very strong suspicion that she probably would have been one of those people that was complaining about it back then.
Okay.
And I think he's very.
Well, I've already given an example of something he did do to the Associated Press, but okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the Associated Press isn't allowed in the Oval Office, which is his office. That's his executive space.
Okay.
And they are allowed in the press room, just like CNN, just like The Guardian.
Which he thinks are illegal media organizations.
He can think whatever he
calls
wants.
the media the enemies of the people.
You called him a fascist.
Thinking whatever you want isn't the point. The point is if you're saying that Donald Trump is like against the First Amendment, then the thing that he thinks, the thing that he can think whatever he wants, that's the point, is that the thing that he thinks is anti-First Amendment. That's the point, right? If you want to abandon that point and say, well, actually, yeah, Donald Trump is against the First Amendment, well, sure. And he's allowed to think that, well, sure, right? But at that point, you're not really countering his claim here. You're just agreeing with him and saying that it's okay.
Yeah.
You can say whatever you want.
Yes. But the president is. I'm not the president of the United States with the executive power to crack down on media.
The First Amendment only applies to the citizens, but not the president.
I never said that.
Okay,
In fact, Donald Trump runs his mouth more than anyone.
Absolutely, he does.
And he doesn't just say stuff. As I said, he actually does stuff. He actually does crack down. For example, Fifth Amendment.
Yes.
Due process.
Yes.
Judges have actually said you have violated due process.
Yes, except for people kind of forget the Clinton, the 1996.
Who cares? What does that matter? Right? Oh, people forget that Clinton did this. I don't even know. We can go look into that story. It's probably not the way that she's going to repeat it, but it doesn't matter, right? What are you saying? You're saying that it's bad when Clinton did it? Or are you saying that it was good when Clinton did it? Or are you saying that it doesn't matter when anyone does it? Like what is what is the point of that statement? The point of that statement is a deflection. It's, hey, don't look over here, look over there.
Immigration Reform Act, where you can get limited due process when you have expedited.
American citizens?
No.
What about American citizens?
Who's getting deported? That's American.
2 American children have been deported multiple this year.
No.
I don't really like that talking point because while it is technically true, the reason behind that is because their mothers were deported, and I think their parents expressed that they wanted their children to also like go with them. I think that's fine. I think that's reasonable. I think that's actually humanitarian. Like, you don't want to separate the kids. If the parents wind up being deported and they go back to their whatever country and they say we want our kids to go with us, I think that's fair. So I don't think it's a good point.
Their parents have been deported, and their parents say,
no, the father was American. No.
Credit where credit's due. She's correct about that.
We don't know because they didn't go to court, and the judge.
They don't have to go to court.
Yes,
that's not a part of the due process.
Are you a lawyer?
I'm very aware of it.
Are you a lawyer?
Do I have to be? Oh.
It doesn't really matter. She's actually she's kind of more correct on this particular argument. I don't really know for sure. I have heard this argument before that there have been cases in the past where there's like an expedited deportation process. I don't know the details of that. I don't know if that was under executive order. I don't know if the court upheld those things. I don't know if that was under like a temporary, like emergency, declaration or something. What I do know though is that during the Trump administration, you had multiple courts that said the Trump administration is in defiance of the due process rights of these particular immigrants. That was adjudicated for those particular cases, and the Trump administration ignored those court orders anyways. So whatever examples that she's bringing up under the Clinton administration or whatever policies those are, I don't think those don't seem to have been applicable to the adjudicated cases that have been going on during the Trump administration.
It's a simple question. Are you a lawyer?
Okay, we're making an argument.
I'll take that as a no. A Trump-appointed judge in the case, not some Marxist lefty judge, as you people like to call them, a Trump-appointed conservative judge said you cannot, it is illegal and unconstitutional to expel or deport an American citizen without meaningful process. He said that in April. So that was an act that Trump did. It wasn't speech. He got rid of an American citizen from the country without process.
So
that's the Fifth Amendment violation.
Since I'm not up to date on that.
These aren't the best arguments from Mehdi here.
Well, you weren't aware that American citizens are being deported. It's a pretty big story.
Yeah,
maybe if you read the fake news, you might know.
What?
If you read the fake news, you might know what's going on. A lot of American
how would I
citizens
know what's
have
going
been
on if I
deported.
read fake news? I don't watch CNN or Rachel Maddow. Sorry.
I don't know if the joke went over her head or what. The point he's making that maybe the fake news isn't as fake as you think it is. Maybe there's a lot of stuff that you're not hearing about because you're not paying attention because people just told you, oh, it's fake, don't listen to it.
Sorry.
That's why you don't know that your fellow citizens have been deported this year.
My fellow citizens.
Are they?
Nice
Okay. All right. Anyways.
And mistrust. Straight Air News helps that matter to you. Spectrum is deliver the and new clicking that trust.
My next claim is that immigrants overall are good for America. Hi, how are you?
Hello, nice to meet you.
By the way, this is generally speaking true. Some of you hearing this may not know this to be true. You may disagree with me. If you look at GDP, they are positive contributors to GDP. They decrease the crime rate statistically, mathematically, because they commit crime at a lower rate. So mathematically, the denominator, the amount of crime that increases, is growing slower than, or I'm sorry, the numerator is growing slower than the denominator. The denominator would be the total amount of people. The numerator would be the total amount of crime. Because they commit crime at a lower rate, that means that per person, there's lower amount of crime here in the denominator. The rate decreases. There's a few different ways of saying this. They decrease the overall crime rate, not the total amount, rate per capita. They commit crime at a lower rate. They are net tax contributors. I think it's like 47% of American citizens don't pay net taxes. Your average immigrant is paying net taxes because they're not eligible for the vast majority of assistance programs. Okay, hold on, let's see. GrizW says, based on studies and data, absolutely, but it also one of the low-hanging fruits when politicians resort to it for blame game. I think what you're saying, and I think I agree with you, is that immigrants are always going to be kind of like a historically easy target to point to. If people have anxieties, if they have social anxieties, they have economic anxieties, it's easy to kind of give people like a singular thing that they can focus on is like, this is the reason why you have these issues. Like, just being dispassionate about it, just like pulling myself away from because I empathize with most immigrants, right? But I can set aside my own empathies, my own sympathies, and just look at rationally, okay, whether or not I empathize with immigrants, is it actually true? Is it actually the case that they are, a detriment on our GDP, a detriment on our economy, a detriment on our wages, detriment on housing? I don't really see that data when I look into it. When I look into it, I find they increase the overall GDP. They actually help subsidize our Social Security program, which is pretty important, right? We kind of have an issue with currently the aging population and being able to properly fund Social Security. So it's kind of nice to have immigrants who pay into Social Security but aren't able to actually take out from Social Security. And maybe you might say that that's unfair to them, sure, whatever, right? But as we look at it now, as it is now, they're contributing more to the system than they take out. They're not eligible for the vast majority of programs. The ones that they are, regardless, some of them are at the state level. Overall, they're contributing more in taxes than they're pulling out. They're contributing to the overall GDP of the economy. They're doing jobs that Americans don't want to do or don't, the wages are too low for Americans to do. And you might say, well, those are jobs that Americans could be doing, Americans should be doing. You have to understand, America right now is actually already at full employment. Our unemployment is low. So when you say you're going to deport these immigrants so that Americans can take these jobs because Americans want to take these jobs, which Americans? The Americans are already fully employed. Now, some people will retort back, oh, well, the unemployment doesn't account for people who aren't looking for work anymore. It doesn't account for discouraged workers. Well, we have numbers on those. You have like the U3, the U5, the U6. The reality is that the U5 and the U6 tend to track the U3. So if the U3 number is low, those other measures that you're talking about, like the labor force participation rate, those are also going to be low. So we're at a period in time in our history where we're at pretty low unemployment. You're going to get rid of all these immigrant workers who are doing some of the work that Americans don't really want to do for wages that Americans don't want to do it at. Where are you going to find these extra workers to take over those jobs? They just don't exist, right? Which is probably part of the reason why the Trump administration is now kind of putting or kind of easing back on the immigration crackdown on farmers, because farmers are part of the Republican base. So they're going to make an exception for the farmers and the farming industry because, hey, you guys are allowed to break the rules a little bit. We'll turn the other way. We're not going to apply the same standards to you guys because you guys vote for us and because we realize we really can't fill those job positions with American workers. So they're not increasing the crime rate. They're actually decreasing the crime rate. They're increasing the GDP. They're helping subsidize some of our social programs that we need, to kind of buttress. They're not even responsible for the vast majority of drugs. I think drug trafficking, it's like 80%, something around 80 something plus percent of drug trafficking is U.S. citizens. And this makes sense when you think about it because, by the way, this is across the border. When you think about it, right, the drug cartels, they're pretty smart. They actually are pretty smart. They're bad guys, obviously, but they're pretty smart. It's harder to get drug trafficking across the border, especially with all the crackdowns on immigration that have happened over the years, the increased scrutiny over the years. If you're using coyotes, if you're using illegal immigrants, then there's a movie called, Meet the Millers or something, where it's about this. That's the premise of the movie, basically based on a true-ish story, I guess. It's easier if you hire American citizens because American citizens face less scrutiny when they're crossing the border. So the vast majority of drug trafficking, and this includes fentanyl, is American citizens. Okay, it's not being driven by your immigrants. Insofar as you have immigrants who are committing crimes, drug trafficking, doing things like this, absolutely, I'm 100% there with you. Deport them, criminalize them, do what you need to do. I think if they're doing bad things, they're doing bad things to the country. I don't have sympathy for them. I'm not like that, right? But I don't believe in being just like unnecessarily brutal, unnecessarily dehumanizing, unnecessarily blaming these people for all our problems when reality is the majority of them, they're working jobs that we don't want to work. They're working hard. They're kind of keeping their nose under the radar. They're not really engaging in a whole lot of crimes. They're not really drug trafficking. They're just, they're just kind of doing like lawn mowing and picking grapes and shit, like shit that you don't want to do. And, it's not that big of a deal. Anyways, let's continue on with this.
So in regards to your claim, I just want to start by asking this. Do you care more about helping Americans or immigrants in this claim?
Immigrants are Americans. I'm an immigrant and American.
I don't like that talking point. I don't think that this is a talking point that works with your average voter, right? Immigrants are American. Well, yes. Yes, in the sense that there are immigrants who come over and they get legalized like Mehdi Hasan has, and that, most Americans have immigrated to the country at some point in time or the other, or their parents did at some point in time or the other. Even, the founding stock of America, those are people who immigrated over as colonists in the 1700s or 1600s, whenever it was. But obviously, when she says immigrants, what she's referring to is people who don't have like legal citizenship status, right? And I think everybody who watches this understands that that's the context. So to retort back that they're Americans makes you sound like you're an extremist on the issue. That's not a good way of framing it. My response to a question like that from her would be, are you for immigrants or are you for Americans? Well, I don't think that I have to choose one or the other. I mean, I think that most immigrants are okay. I think they're fine people. I prioritize American citizens. I do. But I also don't think that that means, like, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. Like, there's mutual benefit to immigrants and to American citizens. I think American citizens should be the priority because they are our citizens. That should be what the law prioritizes. But it also doesn't mean, like, it doesn't have to be like an us versus them thing. That premise that it's us versus them thing is a false dichotomy.
Well, immigrants are not Americans. Americans are the people that were born here.
That's not true. What's the basis of your claim for that?
Are you talking about people that get naturalized in the process of becoming American?
14th Amendment. Have you read it?
Okay, yes, I have.
Citizenship clause. It says any persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States.
I'm aware of
that. I think Mehdi here, I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's charitable to what she's saying. Okay, she could be a crazy person. So far, she hasn't gone crazy or anything. I think he knows what she's trying to say. I think he should be a little bit more charitable.
There's about 40 to 50 million naturalized Americans in this country.
Yes, but
you didn't seem aware of it because you said Americans versus immigrants.
So, but are you understanding that the process of getting all these immigrants that come in here we've been also the millions of immigrants, it's up to the millions, it's the last 20 years now, and it has dramatically affected Americans here in the country, which
positively, I would argue.
People like me and everyone around here, we cannot find homes or even get jobs within our own fields or go to college where we get into.
I actually don't know about this. This has been a more recent talking point that the right has brought up, that basically they're taking like the anxiety over like the housing crisis, and they're once again, let's just blame the immigrants on it. I don't know that immigrants are a significant factor in why housing availability is an issue. One thing I will say is that with immigrants, especially illegal immigrants, you'll find oftentimes, for better or worse, that they actually will tend to all get together and kind of rent out a place themselves, and they'll kind of pack in like very dense living situation where if that's the case, if that's kind of the standard model, if that's the average for them, then they're probably not making a significant dent on home availability because, number one, they're probably taking homes that most Americans don't want to live in places most Americans probably don't want to live in, and they're not taking a huge amount of it because they're tending to pile in and cohabit, co-live together in these places. So, but let's look this up. I'm curious, right? We have the internet. We live in the information age. We don't have to pretend that we don't know these things or that we can't find them out. We can look this up. And I encourage you guys to do this, right? I encourage you to be responsible citizens of the world when you don't know something, when you're not sure. Look it up. Immigrants' effect on housing. Housing prices are part of it, but I also want to know housing stock. The Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies, and when it comes to questions like this, I usually like to see get a survey of different organizations, different studies, because any one particular study could potentially be biased for one reason or the other. But usually, if you get like a variety of different sources of information, and maybe those sources don't even have like the same ideological or like the same agenda, if they're arriving at similar conclusions, then you can probably go, oh, okay, well, even these people that disagree with each other seem to be arriving at the same conclusion. But let's see what this one says. The recent surge in immigration has sparked a policy conversation about the role of immigrants in the housing market, particularly when it comes to housing costs. This is taken on a particular urgency context of ongoing affordability crisis in which half of renters are cost burdened and many people are getting priced out of homeownership. The timing of the recent surge in immigration, however, does not line up with the high growth in both rents and home prices that happened at the start of the pandemic. Immigrants play a role in housing growth, sometimes to a substantial degree. I mean, it is also worth mentioning, right, that you have immigrants that work in construction. So if you get rid of all these people, maybe you're hurting housing affordability because now you're getting rid of some of the people who help drive down the cost of housing construction. That's something to consider, right? These are always multivariable systems. When you change one thing, you're potentially changing a lot of other things in the system. Immigrants play a role in housing growth, okay, but housing demand during the pandemic has been primarily shaped by native-born household growth and a time of constrained housing supply. So what does the data tell us about the role of immigrants in housing demand and supply? See, it's my understanding that the real issue with housing in the United States is one of zoning and construction, that we don't have enough zoning for the kind of housing stock that we need, and we're not doing enough construction in it. And I think all this other stuff about like immigrants, just before I even read into this, I think that's just kind of like it's like a wedge issue. It's like a talking point, and it's really tangential to really the crux of the issue, which is NIMBYism. It's zoning. It's not having enough funding into like construction projects for housing. I think that's the real issue. Maybe there's an element there of like wages. Have wages kept up with the increased cost of housing? I'm not sure. So what does the data tell us about the role of immigrants in housing demand supply during the recent period of rapid growth and housing crisis? It's true that immigrants play an important role in housing growth and housing demand, though the share of growth from immigrant households fluctuates over time, largely driven by variations in native-born household formation. For example, foreign-born households account for 50% of household growth in 2010 to 2015. Okay, so that seems pretty significant, right? If you're having 50%, half of the household growth being due to immigrants, okay, that is potentially a significant factor. Amid weak native-born housing formation after the Great Recession, according to the American Community Survey data, the native-born household formation increased leading up to the pandemic. Foreign-born housing accounted for 23%. Okay, so still a pretty significant percentage, 23%, but that's kind of close to like what, 1 in 5. When rents and housing prices spiked after the onset of the pandemic, immigrants were still not driving household growth. Foreign-born householders accounted for 25% of household growth from 2019 to 2023. Amid particularly strong native-born household growth. As a result, 16% of all households were headed by an immigrant in 2023. It should be noted that these numbers from ACS include both documented and undocumented immigrants. Arrived in the housing surge was historically high. The CBO estimated level of immigration surge from average of 990. It's almost 1 million in 2020, and 2.7 million in 2022, and 3.3 million in 2023. Now, these numbers sound high, but you have to keep in mind, by the way, that the U.S. population is about 340 million. I'm not sure if that number accounts for immigrants. So let me see. U.S. population including immigrants. Immigrants. The U.S. immigrant population peaked in record highs 47 million. Okay, but it doesn't tell me. What is the U.S. population? That year, immigrants comprised 13% of the U.S. population of 331, so 332 million. This was what year is this? 2023. Okay, my number is a little bit off. I don't know if I always thought it was 340. It's actually 332, but that actually includes immigrants. So immigrants make up 14% of the population, which is a significant portion, right? That's not necessarily a bad thing. The question is it an issue? I'm not really sure it is. 14%. It is a statistically significant number, but is it an issue? That's another question. However, the timing of the surge does not line up with the substantial increase in home prices and rents of recent years. Home prices surged in 2020 and 2021, and rents reversed in a slight drop. I mean, that is worth saying, right, is that you had this big surge in immigration right here. You can see on the graph, basically between 2021 through 2023. But I think housing prices, if you're old enough to remember, have been an issue for a long time now. And it's hard to say that this is really like, is it really driven by immigrants when immigrants are really only making up 14% of the population, and they tend to pile a lot of them into one house. It's not like you have 14% of the population eating up 14% of the housing stock. It might be that 14% of the population is taking up 5% of the housing stock because they tend to live together. I don't know. At least from this data. So if not for immigration, what explains the dramatic rising housing? One major factor is demand is historically large millennial generation being a prime home buying ages with years of pent-up demand. Here's another aspect of the housing crisis that no one talks about. They're contravailing, I think that's the term, forces when it comes to housing prices. The American dream is to build up to get your 2-bedroom, 2-bath, white picket fence housing with your 2.5 kids and your dog, right? Part of the American model for success has been that you buy a home, you settle down in a home, and you're building up equity through your mortgage on your home. Home owners in the United States living the American dream rely on the value of their home increasing over time, rely on housing being the primary investment for which they build equity, build credit, I suppose. But that relies on a model that simply by owning property, that property will increase faster than the rate of inflation. But for that to be the case, that means that the appreciation of your investment, of your American dream, of your equity, of your mortgage, whatever, in order for that to increase, you're also saying that the cost of living, the cost of housing increases for new home buyers, because you can't really decouple those things. There's an issue that we have with the American population where they want both. And the average American doesn't realize that they want both. They want simultaneously for real estate to be the primary vehicle for them achieving the American dream in building equity, building credit, building this asset that you're able to leverage against, while simultaneously wanting housing costs to go down and wanting there to be affordable housing for this population. Those things work directly against each other. Which is it? Do you want the real estate to be a reliable, appreciable asset that increases faster than the rate of inflation? Or do you want the cost of housing to be low enough so that new home buyers can afford housing? You can kind of have both, but you have to understand that these variables tend to work against each other. And that's a conversation that we don't have. And part of the reason we don't have that conversation is probably because we waste time arguing about whether or not immigrants are the reason why we have housing issues. The impact of immigration on housing markets. Collectively, immigrants have added $3.7 trillion to U.S. housing wealth, helping stabilize communities across the U.S. The map below. Okay. What is the main takeaway of this map? Research shows the increase in absolute number of immigrants in a particular county results in corresponding economic gains, increased demand for locally produced goods and services, and corresponding inflow of U.S.-born individuals as reflected in housing market. Importantly, the research finds that immigrants revitalize less desirable neighborhoods. That's an interesting thing to note here, is that here's a positive aspect of immigrants and housing that no one's talking about, right? Immigrants are coming in, because again, a lot of them, despite the stereotype that we have, a lot of them are actually, it's funny because they have a lot of them have like conservative, old school, traditional values of, they're just working, they have these families that they're trying to afford, and they're trying to go home and kind of live a life. So they revitalize a lot of these less desirable neighborhoods. That's positive. Opening up new alternatives in middle and working class Americans to buy homes and immigrants supports the housing market without exacerbating the nation's worst affordability problems, because immigrants themselves tend to not settle in the most expensive places. So I think if I'm reading this correctly, basically what they're saying is that immigrants tend to not be chasing after the same housing stock that American citizens are chasing after. That seems to be what this is saying here. So that there is an increased demand, obviously there has to be, but that increased demand isn't necessarily distributed everywhere equally, right? The kind of housing that American citizens are shooting for is not necessarily the same kind of housing that immigrants are willing to settle for. Immigrants are also drawn to Sunbelt cities like Houston, where housing has been consistently affordable. How can this research claim that immigrants are causing communities to thrive? Okay. Decomposing the impact of immigration on housing prices, a 1 pp increase in immigration rate increases average housing prices at 3.3%. Okay, what does this say? I decompose total demand effects into those from new arrivals and relocated natives. This is kind of unusual. Usually in research, the writing convention is that you don't speak in the first person. I don't give a shit. I think that some of the writing conventions in research are kind of like pompous and highfalutin, kind of waste time and shit. But it's just funny because I'm not used to seeing the first person in research. I separately estimate these using Spanish province data from 200 to 2012. I'm assuming that's supposed to say 2000. A 1 pp, I'm not sure what 1 pp, I'm not sure what pp means. Partial, no. pp, what is pp here? Obviously not talking about my dingle. Control F, pp. Where else does this pop up? Percentage point, okay. So a 1% increase. a 1% increase in the immigration rate increases average housing prices by 3.3%. I might be misreading this. I might be, and I have a feeling I might be misreading this, but it almost seems like what this is saying is that they actually have an outsized increase on housing prices, right? So for a 1 percentage point increase, you're having a 3.3% increase in the housing prices. Okay, all right. Hey, that might be a negative in the opposite direction. We can be honest about that. But at the same time, I have a feeling I might be doing the math wrong. Anybody who's like big into stats, tell me if I'm abusing the statistics here. How does an increase in immigration inflow? Oh, I don't want to read all of this shit. I'm just trying to get some like top line takeaways. How 40 millionaires create housing wealth. Okay. JD Vance's. I like the Cato Institute because they tend to be libertarians. So they tend to be a little bit like, and I feel like some of the stuff that they publish will even go against their own narratives. So I feel like they tend to be, kind of interesting at the very least. Kind of see what they say because they're not necessarily Republican, they're not necessarily Democrat. Vance is correct in saying that immigrants increase pricing houses. This is probably true. They probably do increase demand and increase the price of housing, but the question is it a significant increase? Is it the driver of the increase? Is it worth kind of directing all of our attention towards them, or are they being used as a scapegoat when really there's much larger factors involved? The intersection of supply and demand determines housing prices like all prices. And again, like that other study was saying, they may be chasing housing stock that increases the pricing of housing on housing that U.S. citizens don't tend to chase after. It might be a different stock of housing that immigrants are targeting versus the housing that native U.S. citizens are typically going after. That's worth considering. Immigrants are people who want roofs over their heads, blah, blah, blah. Land use liberalization can make a housing supply more elastic, but the housing supply will not become perfectly elastic even if all land use laws are abolished. So for your information, what it means, elastic versus inelastic. So they're talking about like basically supply and demand. When you have elastic demand, this is demand that it's like a rubber band. It can fluctuate, it can bend, it's bendable. So like demand for a phone, this isn't like your life doesn't depend on it. So the demand for a phone is elastic in the sense that you can bend the supply and demand curve somewhat. When you have an inelastic demand, like for example, the demand for healthcare, right? You can't afford not to do a procedure that will save your life. Right? So the demand there is inelastic. You can't choose whether or not you have the demand for that. You can't like, hey, you know what? I'm priced out of this phone. Okay, I'll just go buy a cheaper phone. If you need a surgery that's going to be life or death for you, you can't just decide I'm not going to, reduce my demand for that service. You have to demand that service, so to speak, right? But housing supply will not become perfectly elastic even if all land use are abolished. That means that higher demand, all things equal, will drive up prices and quantity of housing. So I guess what they're saying is here, even though there's some elasticity with housing demand, it's not completely the demand's higher, all things equal, will drive up price. So it may not necessarily have like the biggest effect, but there is some like the elasticity it's not super bendable and what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it right now. But there is going to be an element of there. Everybody needs housing, and so it's not completely inelastic, but it's also not the most elastic thing in the world either. So an increase in demand or increased demand for housing size is probably going to have some effect, right? How much of an effect? Immigrants are also inducing the housing supply effect because 10% of all foreign-born workers labor in the construction industry, which rises 14% for non-citizens. See, this is what I'm talking about, is because you also need to factor in that immigrants make up a significant portion of the construction industry. So they're also going to have an impact. You can't just deport them all and then we solved our housing issues, because these are also the people that help build some of the homes. Only 6.2% of native-born Americans work in construction. Only 6.2% of native-born Americans work. Where's this extra percentage coming from? Oh, no, never mind. Estimates show that about 30% of all construction workers are immigrants, because 10% of all foreign-born workers labor. Oh, okay. So 30% of the construction industry may be immigrants. So you can't just deport all these people and expect it to not have an effect on the housing prices. Housing prices will increase if you just deport all the immigrant construction workers. With higher rates in California, deporting those workers or halting more immigrants will reduce the growth in the housing supply. However, the marginal immigrant increase housing demand more than he increases housing supply. Okay, so interesting. So on balance, basically what it's saying here is there's a marginal effect on the increased housing demand that increases the prices versus how much are immigrants kind of offsetting the cost of housing by contributing to the construction of housing. And it sounds like they're saying here, the marginal immigrant increase housing demand. However, the marginal immigrant increases housing demand more than he increases housing supply. Okay, no, it's the opposite. There is a slight increase in the effect of the increased demand versus the effect of how much they're bringing down prices due to their efforts in the construction industry. But again, all these things might be true, and they still may not be like the biggest driver, of the increase in housing. They might be more of a scapegoat. There's much empirical work to support this theory. My first stop is blah, blah, blah. It's also especially noted because most of the debate over the economics of immigration focus on wages, which are barely affected by immigration. In presentations to students, often says that housing is the market where prices are most affected by immigration relative to other labor market. The marginal immigrant affected housing price by a factor of 3 to 10 more than wages, depending on preferred wage elasticity. Other papers. All right. Well, I see here that I lost my concurrent viewers. I had a good run here. To be honest with you, I've been looking for a way to segue out because I lost these viewers. What I'm going to do is we're going to see here that we're at the immigrant part of the Mehdi Hasan debate, and we'll come back to this later. I'm a little bit kind of worn out on this topic for the day. I have other things that I need to do. So we're going to call it a day there. We're going to maybe pick this up later, okay? Thank you to all the people that tuned in. We had a pretty good showing this time around. If you're watching this afterwards, please consider liking, subscribing. I will talk about politics and philosophy and cultural things in the future. I think you can see that I like to actually get into the data. I think you can see that even though I have my particular positions on things, I like to be fair, I like to be accurate, I like to even look at data that doesn't necessarily agree with my position, right? I hope you appreciate that about me when I do my analysis, and there will be more of it to come. So please consider liking and subscribing, all right? Without further ado, we'll call that a day, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye.